Welcome back to the NetherKast, episode 2. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
I'm good.
Toasty.
Good. I don't know what that means, but that's good.
It means it's warm?
Yeah.
It does. It really does.
It's always good unless it's too toasty. Well, on this episode we're going to be talking about the new characters introduced in MKX. So, let's get to it, and we'll start off with Cassie Cage. What are your thoughts on Cassie Cage? Temp, why don't you start us off?
I'm kind of, in a way, she's my least favorite newly revealed character. I don't have any problem with her. I'm excited about the gameplay. I'm excited about what kind of history we're going to learn. But there's kind of this, is her personality going to be like Cage? Is it going to be like Sonya? Is it going to be sort of a blend of the two personalities?
I think
and those are.
I think that we're gonna get a blend of the personalities. Honestly, she's probably gonna be pretty cocky, but at the same time, kind of a badass.
See a little bit of that already, definitely.
Yeah.
It kind of worries me, to be honest with you. I don't really want any of those things to happen. I really would like a sort of a fresh kind of personality for this character. The cool thing is, this is the first character we have who's grown up in a post MK3, like I don't want to say post-apocalyptic, but she grew up in a world where everyone knows about these horrible realities, and I would like to see that in her personality. But, I mean, if she's like Sonya, I'm not a big Sonya fan. I don't find Sonya terribly interesting. And if she's like Cage, I mean, that wouldn't be bad. I feel like it'd be kind of redundant. I really hope there's a fresh personality associated with this character. I hope she has a better alt costume, too. It's not a bad costume by any means. It's just it's a woman in a blue kind of army jumpsuit, and I mean I guess that's cool. I don't hate it, but it's one of those designs where I'm trying to find that one thing that makes it amazing, and I'm kind of struggling over here.
See,
she's gonna be all right though, I think overall.
Yeah, to me the idea of a female with a bit more spunk and personality excites me in a sense that we don't really have that in the game. And we have Melina, who's a very strong personality in her own right, but that's more of a sexually, trying to fool you into so she can, eat your face off. Whereas with Cassie, she's the type of person that's going to crack not really crack jokes, but you know what I mean? She's
snarky.
Yeah, she's going to be snarky, she's going to be sarcastic, she's going to be, kind of that tough, punk almost like teenager in a way. I don't know how old she is, but the idea is she's gonna be spunky, she's gonna be snarky, and I like that because we don't really have that so far. So even though you're taking elements from Johnny Cage and Sonya, and you can say, well, I don't want that, another character of the same, kind of same element, but she's cut from the same cloth, but that doesn't mean she's going to be the same. I think if you mix those two elements, there's a lot of potential there for a very interesting female character compared to what we already have.
And even with Johnny Cage's sense of humor isn't really spunk. It's more of a, I guess, blind arrogance.
Yeah,
and
he's kind of not dumb,
narcissist
but
for
sort
front.
of oblivious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cassie's going to be more sort of self-aware. And
Yeah.
I guess we don't even really see that with, women aside, really most characters don't have a sense of humor that doesn't play on like an attribute and even though, I guess, like you were saying, Cyborg, with Melina, she does have that, I guess, her own sort of like spunk to her, but it's because she's insane. It's not because she has a sense of humor. That's all part of a horrible portrait.
See, I guess,
and you perceive it that way because of that.
I guess you take Sonya's confidence and Johnny Cage's overconfidence. I feel like there's a lot of fun elements that could be combined of the two because they're two completely different types of confidence. Sonya's confident in her abilities and she's very serious, whereas Johnny Cage is too confident for his own good and always has to tell you about it. I think the combination of those elements to a child that was raised by both Sonya and Johnny Cage, or, if one of them dies at when she's at a younger age, I think that's really interesting to see how that character develops and their personality that is, basically inherited from them, but is completely unique on its own because it can take traits from both of them, but it's not going to be the exact same thing. And I think that's exciting because that in a female character can be really fun. I see a lot of fun dialogue between her and other characters that you just don't get with any of the other females thus far.
Agreed, definitely.
It's going to be worth it to see what kind of banter she and Johnny has, assuming that Johnny's actually in the game. I don't know. I could picture 6 different types of intros, and there's dialogue during fights nowadays too. So playing with her is going to be a ton of fun. Just hear the speech, absolutely. I guess the thing that kind of worries me the most about Cassie is, there's been so much speculation about the possibilities of returning to the old timeline that I'm afraid we're going to actually, at some point, I don't know how, just come up with this scenario wherein people are forced to make a choice between the old timeline and the new one, and then she'll become the linchpin, and the choice decided between Johnny or Sonya or both of them, and I don't know, that seems a little bit kind of cliche to me. And I hope it does not come to that. I'm just wildly speculating here. But, costume-wise, I definitely like what she's got going on. People were up in arms for a really long time about the fact that Sonya didn't dress like a U.S. military agent, got her thong showing up halfway up each of her sides, didn't really look good, and, with Cassie, we finally have that. And, I don't know, I'm glad to see that she's, for once, a character who's not over-sexualized, It's a long time in coming. I think it's a really good thing. I almost kind of feel that she was revealed a little bit too early, because we've got that thing where there's been 3 different versions of her head now so far, and kind of picking and choosing which one looks better. I feel like they should have taken a little bit more time to work on her, and then release her, and then release the details about her closer toward the end, because the revelation itself that Johnny and Sonya had a kid, I'm still kind of reeling a little bit from that. People have been shipping them together since the MK1 movie, and it's kind of amazing in a fanficky way that it actually wound up happening. I'm surprised, and I'm all the way behind it.
I feel like Cassie kind of had to be at E3 because that reveal of Johnny and Sonya had a kid kind of sums up MKX in a nutshell, plot-wise. The whole idea that we're going to see the future and new generations happening and things like that,
Yeah, I think she's the prime example pushing that forward, that this is going to be a new era, this is a new age, and we're actually finally seeing, a descendant from previous fighters, even if one of the previous fighters that, is the parent is still alive. It's not like Katana and Sindel in that aspect. This is completely different. This is somebody that was spawned at the time that MK was happening past the beginning. So it's quite interesting to me that we're finally getting a child from fighters or characters that, we grew up with. So now we're actually, it's almost finally there's an element of these characters are aging and we're seeing their family play out and continue. And that's something we haven't really gotten thus far to my memory.
I think people may have predicted it if they didn't reveal her. I think maybe NetherRealm was afraid that, if they put out the idea that some of these characters are going to have descendants, people would have put 2 and 2 together so quickly that the one dude in Sonya Blade who actually survived MK9, I think they would have seen that coming a mile away. Because, let's say, and I'm sure this isn't a character because it's all sorts of impossible, but let's say it's a Katana Liu Kang child. I think once people got that idea that descendants were going to be in the game, immediately people would have gone to Sonya and Johnny Cage. I think instantly. So it would have just been a matter of time before people put that together, and I think that would have sucked a lot of the impact out of it.
I don't know. I kind of feel like the amount of insane hype that would have revolved around such a reveal, because like you said, people would have, as you said, put 2 and 2 together, but I don't know. That'd be the kind of a character that you just can't wait to see. And I think that, from what we've seen, odd heads aside, she's kind of lived up to the idea or the visual image of what people would associate that kind of a notion of a character to be. I don't know. Could have gone either way. But, I just wish that they'd taken a bit of time to work on her appearance first.
It definitely fits, yeah. It's exactly what I imagined if someone said Sonya and Johnny Cage sort of in a, as a descendant, Cassie Cage is almost identical to what I imagined. Maybe not the color scheme, but almost everything else, pretty much.
Yeah, she definitely has a look that you would have expected from a child between the two. She has Sonya's serious appearance, but Johnny Cage's attitude. And I think that really, like I said, I like that. I like the combination a lot from what we've seen thus far. I like the gum chewing, pistol shooting aspect of her and nut punching and everything. I just think she's going to be a very fun character. Kind of how like Johnny Cage and MK9 really shined as the character with all the, witty quips and etc. like that. She's going to probably be that character in this game. So I just hope we get to see a lot from her because I think she's the type of character that can really win over a lot of fans and be brought back in future games.
Which she has so far. There's a lot of Cassie fans out there already.
Yeah, and that just goes to show that just seeing her is obvious, like seeing what she's bringing to the table is obviously working, which is, a pretty amazing thing to say considering NetherRealm's track record of the previous few games where they tried introducing new characters. A lot of people didn't take to them, at least not for a long time, and they're still not regarded, as highly regarded as the originals from the original games. So to see them create something new now, obviously, they're kind of fighting an uphill battle, but they're doing, they're doing that well, I think, especially with Cassie. So I'm definitely happy with her. What do you guys think of her gameplay?
All right, I'll go first. Well, let's see. Her styles are called Hollywood, Brawler, and Spec Ops, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And let's see. We've seen that Spec Ops has like a that's the one where she's wearing a little headset, and she has at least a move where she can like call down an airstrike, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's see, in Brawler, I think she has like a couple of command grabs, sort of like Sonya did in MK9, that one sort of grapple move, and like an air throw or something like that too. See, I'm not sure. I think Hollywood is the one we've seen the least of. All we know, I think, is that she has a version of the nut punch in that one.
Yeah,
I think it's just too early for me to make any calls regarding her gameplay. I just don't think that I've seen enough at the end of the day.
Yeah. See, that's sort of the problem, is what I'm saying. Like, we haven't really, like, we've seen the least of her, like, in gameplay so far.
Yeah, out of the
of
four
all the new characters.
Yeah, of the four new characters, she's definitely been kind of less shown and kind of kept more under wraps for sure. Especially when it regards to her X-ray, which based what we've seen from the leaks that have been out there from gaming conventions, we've seen that it is involving a nut punch, and isn't it like a triple nut punch, and it shows him exploding or something like that?
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, like she does a nut punch, and she like pulls out a can of hairspray and a lighter and flashes fire in your face. And then like the actual like X-ray zoom in is another nut punch, and that one actually like it shows your testicles like being shoved up into you and popped.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty awesome.
It's amazing. Although it's going to be a weird thing just seeing testicles modeled and the rest just sort of still that uneven, boyish, neutral lump from MK9. It's funny. They just kind of hang there. Like, okay, just use your imagination for the rest. We're not going to go into too much.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on her gameplay?
Well, what we've seen from like her regulars, it looks like she has gun moves sort of like Striker, but like she also has an air one too, and she has like a collapsible baton she swings in like an uppercut, I think. And the main thing that we've seen her do is she has her own versions of shadow kicks. Like, they don't move in the same directions Johnny's do, but she still has that green glow, and she has like a kick that goes upward like a Shoryuken.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she looks, I think she looks interesting. I think she looks like a sort of a cross between Johnny and Stryker, and I sort of enjoyed playing both of those characters in MK9, so I think she might turn out pretty interesting.
Yeah, I enjoyed both of those characters' gameplay as well. She definitely looks fast and fun and has a lot of things at her disposal, so I'm excited for her. I think she looks pretty fun. And we've seen her fatality as well. What are your guys' thoughts on her fatality? I believe she shoots them in the head and then sticks her gum over the hole, and then it blows a blood bubble, and then she pops it
first.
What's that?
Doesn't she cap the knees first?
Yeah. I knew there was another part to that, but yeah, she does shoot him in the knees first. What are you guys' thoughts overall on her fatality?
I feel like that's the best indicator of her snarky personality that we've seen so far. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I really like it as well. It's very spunky, over the top, crazy, silly, but not in a way that's cheesy or like in a I don't know, in a very it's still in a serious tone, but it has, an element that this girl has some personality to her.
And
the violence in it is very low key compared to all the other fatalities, like all the ones we complained about in the last episode.
It's not overly sadistic. It's not dragged out. It seems something that'd be perfectly in character for her, and it's got that little bit of flair, pizzazz, and a little bit of humor. So yeah, I'm all about this fatality. It's wonderful.
It's uniquely Cassie, and I can't really say that about a lot of other fatalities. With that fatality specifically, like if you put that with another character, it'd be like, what? And so it's a good philosophy behind fatalities. I don't know if the presentation blows me away, but that's okay though. I mean, the idea of a fatality to me is to let the character shine through it, and it's a great template to start making fatalities on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, anytime you have a fatality where the personality really shines through for the character more, and it speaks more for it rather than just over the top gore, I think that's a really good indicator of a pretty good fatality, because I mean, what you look for in a fatality is obviously they kill their opponent, but how do they do it, and does it say a lot about if you stripped away Cassie from that fatality and you put just any other random character there, like you said, it wouldn't really work. But since it's Cassie and that's her personality and it speaks well to her personality, that it works perfectly for her. So I couldn't agree more that I really like this fatality, particularly because it is simple and eloquent for her, and like I said, it really shows off her personality really well.
It's a good sign for things to come. If we see more of that, we're going to have a good number of fatalities that are just going to fit the overall aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's move on to D'Vorah next. She was one of the original characters revealed for MKX in the initial trailer and gameplay. And basically, she is an insect queen, and kind of, I guess we can expect her to be controlling an army of insects. We don't know to what degree, and she has some sort of race of her own people. And I really like the way she looks. I think I don't know, we don't have any character like her in Mortal Kombat right now, which is, I'm always a fan of introducing something unique. If they introduce a new character that I feel like their role is already being played in the game by somebody else, I feel like there's no point in introducing that character, and that's led to some kind of bland designs in the past. Whereas with D'Vorah, we don't have any insect based characters, and we don't have any insect queens for sure. She has her additional arms or legs or whatever the hell you want to call those things that come out of the side of her. She has wings. She has, I don't know, I just really like the way she looks. She looks very foreign, very alien, very insect-like, and I'm just really digging both her appearance, her personality, the way she talks. I'm liking it quite a bit. It's another one of those characters that you feel like they learned something by creating Injustice, how to make a character like this with a little bit more, almost kind of. It's a very visual character, and I'm really enjoying that. So I'm glad they're introducing her in this game.
Yeah. I think she's very potentially interesting. I mean, her design is. I definitely agree that it's very creative and unique compared to like what we tend to see in Mortal Kombat, and that story-wise, I'm curious about the potential because she sort of reminds me, like, what we know about her backstory apparently is that her race is one of those whose realms was conquered by Khan and merged with Outworld, and they've been in hiding, and now that Shao Kahn is dead, they're coming out of hiding to do whatever it is they're going to do, or whatever it is she's going to do. So she sort of reminds me a lot in that respect of Nitara.
Yes.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like, Nitara was a very interesting character in Deadly Alliance and very sort of important in subtle behind-the-scenes ways to the plot. Like, it's kind of her fault that Reptile became Onaga, but other than that, she's not really, like, important to the game she was in, and she sort of amounted to nothing in the end, and I fear that either that or becoming just a minion of, like, Kotal Kahn or something like that, like she could just be a female Baraka. Like, I fear she might go down either one of those directions and not amount to much, because especially since, as far as we know, the story mode in MK9 will be structurally, in MKX, will be structurally similar to the one in MK9. It's possible that the villains will once again not get much in the way of screen time.
Yeah, I really hope that's not the case because, like I said, I really like her uniqueness compared to... I mean, you have Kitana, Melina, Jade, which are, even though they all have different stories, different personalities, but, they come from kind of the same, princess, protector, and obviously Melina's creepy factor, but basically, even though they're different, they come off very samey in comparison to D'Vorah, I should say. Whereas D'Vorah is completely her own thing. So I'd hope we don't see another Nitara or Ashra, or it's that along that line of where I guess they could always come back. Those characters could, but I feel like I really don't want any of the new characters to just be introduced and completely forgotten about. I think D'Vorah has a lot of potential to her.
Yeah.
And yeah,
the minion role might work well for her too. If I got the dialogues right, I think Raiden offered her protection, and I think she may have responded with something along the lines of, maybe you can't protect me, or she declined it. I like the idea of a reluctant evil, someone fighting for evil, but not necessarily with evil motives. I think there's a lot to work with right there, but it depends where they take it. I would hate for her to work for Kotal, then die in the story mode, and it never goes anywhere, which is not likely. I don't see that happening. But like I said, it just depends where they take it.
Yeah.
I think that tales of Raiden's idiocy are just kind of spreading throughout the land, personally. In comparing D'Vorah with Nitara, I think that Nitara actually might have had a good chance to maybe come back in Deception and be more of a forefront character, but I think that in addition to being kind of like a real background character, despite her minor role of importance in bringing Onaga to life, they say that the first bites with the eye. It's all about presentation. And another problem that Nitara had was there was just not a lot going on with her. She was a vampire, she spit blood at you, and she had wings, and she did a little unicorn flip kick. And that's all she wrote.
Yeah.
She just wasn't an exciting character. She had a great potential design, and all that made her look like she was a part-time member of KISS. But, D'Vorah does not have that problem. I look at D'Vorah and I see 10 years of Mortal Kombat Online fan submission forum entries kind of like coming to their natural conclusion. I've seen a lot of characters over the ages who've been designed with like an insect or an insectoid theme, and this pretty much just kind of screams that to me. It's wonderful. Like, her presentation, no problem. She's got so much character and she's freaky to look at. She's wildly different in all of her variations, and a lot of storyline potential. I look at her and I can't see this much thought or design going into someone who was just relegated to being, an outworld goon. I see a lot of good things for her in the future. I'm hopeful.
I think that might work against her, though. At least when I first saw D'Vorah, I wasn't really that excited because, the idea of a female who has insect qualities, who has holes in her body that shoots out insects, it's a very uncomfortable design for me. Looking at it grosses me the fuck out, but it's still a good character design. I can't complain about it. It's definitely very original. And it's definitely very smart. It fills a function that's never been filled before. But I have to enjoy looking at the character. Draman was a very good example. I love Draman. I thought he was awesome. And I love that mask. And I'm like, well, if I use the primary, I have this awesome mask, but it looks like he's wearing a loincloth. It almost has like a old school diaper thing going with it. And I'm like, that's horrible. So I picked the all costume and I'm like, okay, well, this is cool. He has sort of like a mummy thing going, but there's no mask anymore. And I have to look at his face, which I don't know. I'm not a big fan of ugly things, And if the character's there, if I like the character and I can get invested in her conflict, all that goes out the window. I'm like, okay, we can do visceral, freaky, grotesque. We can do that all day because I like this character. Painwheel from Skullgirls. I didn't like that character until I found out the story. And now I think that's one of the coolest characters in fighting games. So she's growing on me in time, but it's an obstacle I have to overcome. So I guess it's going to depend on the person. I'm sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I know exactly how you feel. Like, I'm not entirely feeling D'Vorah just because I don't usually go for the monster-looking characters, and I think that is like an acquired taste.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm acquiring it slowly, but if her story mode ends up being shallow and it doesn't go anywhere, or if it takes a turn that if I don't think it works for the character, it's like, what's left, I have the originality, but I guess, if you ever played Marvel vs. Street Fighter, like, they say choose your alter ego when you go to the select screen. Well, in a way, that's what you're doing. You're picking a character you can kind of immerse yourself into. And it's so hard to get under the skin of a design like that, for me at least, And I'm not an insect guy. I'm not... I don't have a phobia, but they gross me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like insects either, but I guess I appreciate that it's something original being brought to the series. I guess at the end of the day, I completely agree with you guys that I don't usually tend to go for the monster characters either. I like to have something that I relate to is usually the ones I gravitate towards most. But with that being said, the underlying factor for me really enjoying this character and appreciating her presence and being introduced is, like I said, I like originality. I like characters that have really distinct visuals and distinct personalities and distinct gameplay elements and themes to them, obviously. And she has all of those things thus far. Personality-wise, we don't know so much yet, but just everything else she has. She said, you're not going to ever confuse her with any other female in the roster, and that's a good thing, because with a roster growing over, 50, 60 characters, you can't have anybody that gets introduced at this point that's that just kind of fades away into obscurity just because they don't have a unique look or personality. So there's really no reason they should have been brought in the first place. You could have just drug up somebody else from the past, given them a rehaul, and use them instead, because if that role's already been filled, then use that character. We don't need anybody else that is too similar to anybody else already introduced, in my opinion.
It's amazing how hardcore her fans already are. D'Vorah fans I'm already seeing a zeal to those guys. They really like D'Vorah, which is exactly what I want to see. I want to see characters who leave that kind of legacy.
Exactly. We want characters introduced that are going to carry us into the next generation. We'll always have characters from MK1 through MK Deception brought back in here and there in some points and thrown in. It's never going to be completely new characters. I don't think they would ever take that risk, nor would I want them to, because I like a lot of the characters from the previous generations. But at the same token, this does need to move forward at some point, and if they're going to be introducing characters like Devora and Cassie and some of the other ones we're about to get to, I'm all for more characters being introduced.
Yeah.
I feel like MK really, really needed this. You know, we had basically what amounted to Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 plus 1 or 2 extra characters last time through. I mean, last time was a treat for the long-time fans, and this game, it's a common perception that this is kind of like the Street Fighter 3 of the series, and I wouldn't put it to that extent, as in removing everyone minus 3 people. That's what people are also afraid of, but from what they've said so far, a balance of about half new people, half old returning characters, that sounds fine to me. I love the idea.
Yeah.
Perfect balance.
All right, well, let's, any thoughts on her gameplay thus far? I'm really enjoying the way she plays. Like I said, I like her special moves. I like using bugs and weird stuff like that just because it is different. I like the fact that she can fly around and do stuff like that. It's just, she's just creepy, but in a good way, and I completely agree that I don't like that type of stuff either, but that doesn't mean I can't appreciate the fact that her gameplay does look really, really different. So I'm really liking the way she's playing right now. I like the use of her additional legs, and she's almost like a Goro type of thing, but obviously in a much slimmer, very slimmed down, creepy looking version. I don't know, it's weird to put it into words, but yeah, I'm really liking what we've seen so far from her gameplay.
I agree. Her concept is coming to life, and that's what every character should be. With the appendages and the insects, I think they did that really well.
I think that I'm curious to know how they'll carry out. She's one of these characters who has a move that like inflicts a status effect, like a poison, I think.
That's
And I'm curious how that will like balance, because it's almost reminds me of in Deadly Alliance when you could stab your sword into a character and you'd lose it, but they'd bleed for the rest of the match and slowly die.
And that's why they never brought that back for Deception or Armageddon, because you died far too quickly. That's probably going to take maybe 1 or 2 patches to really even it out. I'd be surprised if they got a perfect balance for health loss at the rate that it goes off the bat, but I can see a lot of potential in this. Venomous is actually the style which contains this. Venomous is, of our 3 fighting styles, the one that I'm absolutely most looking forward to. I like my gameplay to be really oriented around hit and run, flying away, poisoning people, laughing at them as they slowly bleed out. That's my kind of gameplay. I'm a terrible person. So, Venomous is the one for me.
All right, well, any other thoughts on our gameplay, guys?
I would actually also just like to put out the fact that we were discussing this last time with Quan Chi, how some of us felt that the visual cues for his variations weren't, or could have been improved upon, weren't exactly subtle. I think that Devora is a really, really good example of how you should get that done. Because, like, her Venomous variation, she's got, like, the acid or the poison dripping out of her pores, cracks in her skin. Broodmother sees her without her cloak, revealing her sexy bald head. And Swarm Queen, she's surrounded by wasps. And I think that's really how you should do it. Each of these traits seem very, very uniquely, very, very uniquely suited to her. Each speak to, part of her personality. Even just the baldness of Broodmother seems kind of, regal and royal. It's dignified in a way. And I think this is really how you do it.
As long as the bugs around her don't constantly buzz like Drawmins did. Yeah, I think the thing about her gameplay that it sort of makes me think it's a shame, like going back to what we were saying about why Nitara was similar to her but didn't catch on. It was all sort of for gameplay reasons. Those characters from the Deadly Alliance era, they sort of fell flat for people because of the Deadly Alliance engine and, the moves. That was the least creative thing about them, and it's such a shame that they couldn't have been created in an engine like this one, because then we'd have seen, some more creativity come out. And those characters, I think, would have had more life to them.
With Nitara, I think it was just especially bad, though. With a character like Mavado, I mean, I could have easily pictured some of those sliding back and forth moves, or even like his little dodge around on a 2D plane of some sort. But Nitara was just, ugh. If you'd put that in Ultimate MK3, that would have been the worst character in the game. Little projectile.
It's hard to blame him though, because I mean, with a vampire design, I wouldn't really know what to do in a 3D environment with vampire. I mean, maybe super speed, perhaps, but I mean, she had a blood projectile, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. She had it's similar to the one Scarlet has in MK9.
Yeah,
Except I don't think she took damage from it. It was just a regular projectile.
She also had a throw which gave her back a little bit of health too. She was the only character who could do that. She sucked the blood out of you.
She would probably play somewhat generically, like sort of a Melina-esque, because like Melina does have that move where she jumps on you and bites you in MK9. I don't know. It is hard to sort of imagine how Nitara would play if you were trying to like make her more interesting. I'd like to think maybe she'd be more based around flapping those wings and maybe flying, sort of like Sindel, but hopefully a lot more mobile.
Maybe shorter, faster bursts, like back and forth. It's kind of like how Blanca has in Street Fighter 4.
Yeah. All right. Well, are we ready to move on to her fatality?
Absolutely.
All right. I like her fatality from what we saw. She throws a thing of bugs through your body. They eat immediately right through your body and come back out from the other side through your body once again. And then she has bugs eat away at your face, almost kind of in like a reptile MK4 effect, but in a even more like gruesome manner, because they just literally eat. With the Gore-Tech now, it looks even better because it just eats away at your face. You fall down, your skull kind of hits the ground and your jaw comes off as you're falling, and then the skull rolls across the ground and she steps on it. Like, I really think that's quite effective with these bugs, and it shows just how disturbing they can be and how fast they can eat away at your skin. So it's quite a disturbing thought if you don't like bugs.
I'm sure Temp's a big fan of this one.
I really love the way the bugs eat the skin off the head and the head rolls and then she stomps on it, but I feel like the first part where she sends the swarm to make holes in your body might sort of suffer from the same problem we were talking about last time with scorpions, where it's sort of two unrelated things, and I feel like it's just sort of showing off, like it's the tech demo thing again, like they're just, look what we can do, we can put holes in them now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The holes through the body coming both ways definitely isn't necessary. She could have just had the bugs eat away at the face, then you drop to your knees, jaw falls off, skull rolls over and stomp. That would have been plenty, and I think that would have been more simple and effective, so I agree with you there.
There's a nice practicality to it, and that's always what I look for. Everything about it makes sense, you know? I mean, when the insects eat the body, that's precisely what they would do. And does it bother me? You know, the bugs don't. It's when Devora opens up her skin to shoot them out. That's what I don't. That's what I'm not feeling. And I'm never going to get used to that. But, and even the post-mortem, which I spoke so much about last time, it doesn't bother me this time. Because when you step on a skull, you know, that's an act of bitterness. That's an act of dominance. That makes sense. You know, and she seems like a character who would do something like that, you know, as opposed to Jax, who I could never see that in a million years. So I do like it a lot. Maybe it is a long, high sequence fatality, but it doesn't feel like it. I don't feel like I'm watching multiple steps, you know, like I'm going through panels of different actions. I don't feel like that at all.
Yeah.
At least it's all done by the swarm of bugs. Like she doesn't then pull out a sword or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
See, I'm watching right now. I don't know. I think that it could have been a bit better accomplished if she just tossed one swarm of bugs. But she kind of like goes forward, back, and then forward again. Maybe cut it down by 0.2 seconds. That's just me being really nitpicking. Artistically, I really appreciate the fact that the jaw falls off, that the skull is still covered with blood. It's really good. It's not my favorite fatality because, I mean, I've seen faces disintegrating before. Thank you, Reptile. But it works very well for her. The skull stomp is very regal, and no, suits her. It's okay. I like it.
Regal is a good term. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
She's a queen. That's why I said earlier, I can't see her being a goon. She's a queen in every sense of the word. A gross queen, nonetheless.
You know what her story kind of reminds me of? Kriya from Conquest.
Kriya.
I mean,
man, it's been forever since I watched that.
I've never seen Conquest.
Wasn't she also kind of a bug lady?
Yeah, the whole thing was like her species lived like they were like bee people. I mean, they looked like humans, but they like lived in hives, and they'd like mate with guys and kill them to give birth to like more of their species, and like they had matriarchy society.
It's coming back to me now.
Yeah, I mean, Devora's a lot different in that she, actually looks like a bee person, and that she can make, swarms of bugs come out from inside of her body and stuff. But I don't know, just the whole the queen of a bug people thing somewhat reminded me of that.
I think it's possible, maybe even a little bit likely, that they actually might have actually taken some inspiration from the old Conquest series. I think that someone, possibly Ed himself, has just been really going back and examining MK's successes and failures and everything in between, and just kind of seeing what went right, what went wrong, what could we use, what sounds like a good idea. The thing that set me off on this was just watching how oily Noob Saibot appears in MK9, just gushing liquid. I mean, he had like a little bit of a liquid explosion kind of back in MK Trilogy when one of his clones was blocked, but prior to that, there wasn't any...
There was a bit, I don't know if you remember, Deception was going to get a comic book, and then it never came out, like, during production. The project fell apart or something. But there were a few sample pages released. One of them shows Noob Saibot teleporting, like, in the form of making a puddle on the ground and coming out of that puddle. So it's not the first time he was depicted as, like, liquidy.
Just to say, that's a really, really obscure bit of history. I wouldn't say that like more than 10% of the MK fan base probably remembers that. It's not the first time, certainly, but that wasn't the first time either, It does go back to Conquest first. Wouldn't surprise me. Just saying. Paranoid.
Obscure history is what I do.
True. I really do wonder what happened to that thing. What went wrong? Oh, well, I'm glad we have a new comic book series now at any rate coming. Looking forward to that.
Yep.
All right, well, if that's all we have to say about Devora, let's move on to Ferra. What are your guys' thoughts on Ferra? Temp, why don't you start us off?
I really didn't like this character at first. I've really come around. When I first saw... It was weird. I first saw the MKX trailer, not the initial one, but the first one with the new characters. And I saw Devora, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Then I saw Ferra, and I was like, what? And I kind of had to process it because it was a little dude on top of a big dude. I didn't come to think of Master Blaster yet, but my subconscious did. And it took me a while to put that together, and I don't know, I just thought he was an incredibly weird character. I wasn't feeling it. Then when I found out the character on top of Torr was female, I'm like, what? Is it a child? Is it a little person? What am I looking at? And at first I was like, no, that this isn't going to work at all. I'm already not a fan of grapplers, and now I didn't know what to make of it. But, I started kind of meditating on the idea, and I'm like, well, I'm glad they're drawing influences from cult films. I always loved that about the old games, and I kind of like the idea that you're playing two characters again. I didn't like it with Noob Smoke, because I thought the merits of those characters came out when they were played individually. I feel like each concept kind of stepped on the other concept's toes. Not here. Here, I think it works really well. And I think in terms of story, we're going to see something interesting. I have no idea what they're going to do, but I could see some comic relief being done. And from a gameplay perspective, they're going to have so much fun with it. I really look forward to using I want to say is it Vicious, where Torr throws Ferra?
I'm not sure. Is that the one? Yeah.
I think that's Vicious, yeah.
The Vicious variation sees Ferra turn into a living weapon with her increased damage.
There you go. Yes, that is going to be awesome. I mean, I'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the gameplay, but it's all kind of coming together. I'm glad we're seeing more cult influences in MK, and just I mean, when the color left Kano, it kind of went into Ferrator. You know, I kind of like the, I guess, Roman thing they're going for with the red and the buckles, and I'm feeling it now. I would say Ferrator is by far my favorite new character.
Yeah, I like Ferrator. I wouldn't say they're my favorite new character or characters, but I do like them, and I feel like so far they're getting kind of. They almost feel like the black sheep of the new characters based on just the way the forums have been talking about them. Nobody really kind of puts them out in the forefront, so I'm glad to hear that they're your favorite new character, but for me, they're not my favorite, but I definitely like the concept. I'm digging the fact that there's this big brute with this small child that's basically the brains of the operation. So it's kind of this role reversal where, you know, the big grown up isn't the smart one, it's the child. It's almost like those silly, cheesy movies where children are way smarter than the adults, you know, horror movie 101. But the whole concept of Ferrator, I really like introducing a big brute into Mortal Kombat, led by a smaller child, because it enables and it has so much potential for so many unique situations, kind of like how Devora and Cassie, they all have their own potential for all these new interactions with characters that we've seen so many times. We're finally getting some fresh blood for some fresh interactions. Ferrator have their own complete, fresh, unique approach and interactions that I'm excited to see what their story is going to be, who they're going to interact with, how are they going to interact, how are MK characters going to respond to this big, you know, kind of hulkish brute led by this little, you know, loudmouth child. That just intrigues me, and I do like the tag team element of, you know, Ferra, if not, you know, physically helping Torr during battle and, you know, teaming, Ferra just yelling things out to Torr, kind of leading him around and telling him what to do. And I think that's a really unique concept. And on top of it, it's just they have really cool appearances. I like how Torr looks very much like, you know, kind of an executioner. He has the bag over his head. You know, it's kind of has that creepy factor, that mystery, the mystique of it, where it's a bag that's tied over his head, so clearly he doesn't want it taken off or to see what he looks like. It almost has that like Jason Voorhees quality that you almost wonder, is this dude really like messed up looking, or what's his deal? And, you know, maybe he feels self-conscious about his looks. Who knows? Yeah, I do like his outfit. I like the gauntlets he has, and just the overall, like you said, almost kind of Roman-esque type of appearance. Even though it's on this big brute, you don't really think of Roman type things. It's just really interesting. He looks straight out of like almost like a horror movie, but like you said, the Mad Max, you know, Master Blaster, obviously a big influence. Which, you know, Mortal Kombat characters, at least 1 through 3, all had big influences from, you know, movies at those times, the 80s and 90s. So it's cool to have that back, like you said. And I'm definitely digging Ferrator and excited to see where their story and personality take us.
You know, the most common complaint I hear levied against Ferrator is they don't fit into MK, or they don't seem like MK characters.
And that's a bunch of bullshit.
And thank you. I'm here today, ladies and gentlemen, to decry that as garbage. Because I think that if time has shown us one thing about Mortal Kombat, it's that anyone, almost anyone could be a Mortal Kombat character. We've got, like, influences from Greek mythology, Eastern mythology. We've got freaking Terminator influences. There is, at this point, I would not, very little would surprise me, would actually make me say this doesn't belong in MK. I don't think that I have ever said that about any character, and Ferrator is no exception.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of Mortal Kombat, is that you have this mishmash of fighters from all sorts of different realms and, you know, existences with all sorts of different powers, all sorts of different races. For you to say this character doesn't feel like MK, well, first of all, how's that a bad thing? Because that just means they're unique and different, unlike anything we've seen before. So I think of that as a plus. But beyond that, anything can be an MK. We literally have a game that was built on Jean-Claude Van Damme, mixing it up with somebody that's supposed to look like the Terminator, mixed with this old sorcerer, a couple of ninjas, one with ice, one with, you know, fire. Disclaimer, Sub-Zero not being a ninja, of course. But the idea, some reptile dude that wears human skin, a four-armed beast. Like, where do you draw the line of what is MK, what isn't MK. It all fits into MK because MK in itself isn't like this clear cut, you know, that's why I don't get this pure MK talk, because at the end of the day, MK is just all this random craziness, and that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it interesting.
I had this thought about a year back. The topic of chameleon, the male chameleon, came up, and I thought to myself, I hate chameleons so much. What would I do with chameleon to make it more interesting? And I thought of like this John Carpenter's The Thing kind of concept, where he just, I don't know, absorbed different traits and concepts from people as he went on. Not exactly like Shang Tsung, but, you know, kind of more evolving as he goes through an arcade mode or something. And I thought, is that too out there? Does that not sound enough like MK? And instantly the answer came to me. Nope. Anything can be MK. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go on record here, quickly, just say that Ferra is also my favorite of the new characters, absolutely. I am a huge Mad Max fan. I love the notion of the post-apocalyptic world, the visual imagery of barren wastelands, deserts. That's one of the things that I loved the most about the original MK3. It was a world where absolutely everything and everyone, barring our heroes and the villains, was dead. And just seeing Ferra and thinking that they're bringing this kind of influence into MK again, it makes me so damn happy. Design-wise, if it had just been Torr, I would not have been convinced. I would have thought, well, here's some asshole gladiator with a bag over his head. Looks like, you know, the visual image of a goon. But adding Ferra, it's what makes it work. It's wonderful, it's different, I think it's an element that's kind of been long overdue for MK, is having kind of a two-person tag team fight in a different way than Noob Smoke, because Noob Smoke made no Smoke or Noob fans happy, I don't think. Sorry.
I think you made Noob fans happy, but definitely not Smoke ones. Because Noob was the dominant one, and that, you know, the story was Noob's story.
If he only had a brain. But, something else. Something very interesting about Ferra interesting things about Ferra Torr. People have been making a bit of a fuss about Ferra's headband, saying that she's a queen of some sort. And that's very interesting to me. And something else, a nice little tidbit. I don't know if you guys have, heard, but you know Scorpion's slashing fatality, how he takes your face off, and, the face slowly slides off of the head. You know, when he does this to Scorpion, or Sub-Zero, people have seen this on gameplay floors, the mask comes off. And we've seen Scorpion has a nice little dignified mustache. And an interesting tidbit about Torr is, if you guys haven't heard this, Torr's bag over his head, it does not come off. And I feel like there's a very, very particular reason for that. I'm not going to start throwing out conspiracy theories right here and right now, but I have more than a few. We could be here for months.
People have been speculating about his potential identity under the sack because he's got this big glowing red eye and that's all we can see of his face. I think the leading theory is, and I don't necessarily believe this at all, but there's the suggestion that he's some kind of reincarnation of Shao Kahn or something like that.
Interesting.
Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't object to it. Wouldn't put it as my preferred theory, but I don't know.
I think I wouldn't be against it because it does sort of. I mean, if you bring Shao Kahn back as Shao Kahn, then everything Raiden did in MK9 is meaningless entirely. Like, Armageddon can still happen, so his visions should not have been, prevented. So Shao Kahn has to stay dead, but if you bring him back in another form, as a different character who's just sort of, Khan's soul in a different body, and it's limited in power, and it's a big dumb brute that can't talk and has really no chance of becoming emperor again, but it could be something else, that would be, different. That would be an acceptable way around the fact that he has to stay dead.
See, in that theory, though, if he's reincarnated in a different body, then what is the need in hiding his face? Because if he doesn't even look the same, then why having his mask or his bag over his head fall off and seeing his face, would that be a dead giveaway that it's Shao Kahn if he's in a new body?
Well, I mean, the body could be similar. Like, here.
Unless he's wearing
one
a skull
suggestion would
helmet
be,
underneath that.
we don't even necessarily know that Khan was killed by the Elder Gods at the end of MK9. They just sort of carried him off into the sky and there was an explosion.
Yeah.
I mean, for all we know, they could have portaled him to heaven, given him a lobotomy, and now here he is.
That would be quite the story. I gotta say. There's Shao Kahn, for all you Shao Kahn fans. Torr do good.
Chunk, help, Ferra.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
You know, I just listening to Shadaloo kind of made me realize something, because you're right, it does fit MK, and Cyborg said that it does. Torr specifically looks like something out of a horror movie, but Ferra reminded me of something else for a long time, and I don't think I realized what it is till now. When I look at Ferra, when I look at her design and I hear her voice, she almost sounds like something out of a Jim Henson production. When I look at Torr and I look at Ferra, it's like Army of Darkness meets Labyrinth, and I'm like, maybe that's why I like the characters so much. Maybe that is just, I don't know. I mean, now that I think about it, it's kind of brilliant. Are y'all getting that same impression, or?
Now that you've mentioned it, I can't really unsee it. I think I'm gonna go put on my Labyrinth soundtrack.
I can kind of see it. I mean, before, when I looked at Ferra, all that I really was thinking of was like a sort of a tribal, like a pygmy person. But when you put it like that, I can see the theme there. Yeah.
Quick question. In Mad Max, wasn't one of like the rulers of civilization of one of the gangs? Wasn't it a child? Am I getting the right movie? Do you remember between that and Thunderdome and all that?
On Thunderdome, Master's role was basically he controlled the fuel.
Well, I know it wasn't him.
Power.
I was thinking I could have sworn in one of those movies. I could be thinking of another post-apocalyptic movie or even cartoon for all I know. But
you might be thinking of an episode of Futurama.
No, I don't. it might have been, but I could have sworn there was a movie, because I'm imagining live action where a kid is in control, or is in power of a civilization. But for who knows, it could have been Futurama. But I picture Mad Max, the Road Warrior in. I could see it. I know there was a child that threw the boomerang that cut people's heads off, but I don't think that's what I'm thinking of. I don't know.
I think you're right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Towards the end of Thunderdome, after Max eventually is exiled from Bartertown and he wanders around in the desert on the back of a horse, he is saved and he's brought to a village, and the village is mostly populated by children or like young adults. There aren't any real adults around.
Yeah,
so that's it.
That might be it, and that's when he said that maybe there's these queen elements to Ferra, or that the potential that the headdress could mean Ferra's a queen. That's the kind of idea I was thinking, that maybe Ferra is in charge of some sort of civilization that is all the same size or age of Ferra. It's just an interesting thought. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's like the what it is like the on her crown. There's like kanji that spells like Silver Queen or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And we don't really know much story-wise about them, except that they apparently are allies of Kotal Kahn, I think.
Huh.
So, again, probably, like, they might be another Outworld race, or from a village in Outworld that's, they're sort of like Devora, but, like, a different angle.
You know what would be great for Ferra and Torr? Almost like a Rocket and Groot type of interaction and relationship, because I mean it's very similar if you think about it. Torr is like Groot. He's not very intelligent, but he's the big brute, and Ferra is it could be the smart mouth, kind of. I don't know. It's just I draw that similarity between the two, but we don't know enough about Ferra Torr to know if that's even remotely similar personality wise.
Yeah, I could see it. Like if they wanted to go like in a more heroic direction, certainly. I don't know what to expect. Like that's sort of my fear with Ferra Torr is you've got a character who it looks like doesn't talk, being led by a character whose vocabulary is limited like the Hulk, and apparently they're working for a bad guy, so I'm sort of, again, like Devora, afraid they'll fall into the Baraka and Reptile trap of being underdeveloped.
Yeah, when I see Ferra Torr, I don't know. I'd like when you say that, when you hope they aren't just some generic goon or villain or henchman. I think a relationship and characters like Ferra and Torr would make really interesting good guys. I don't know. I just think, like I said, once again, I'm thinking of the Rocket Groot relationship, and I really like that. So maybe I'm just wishful thinking.
That is my fear as well. The first time I looked at them, I thought, oh, great, another goon character, but I am still very, very hopeful that, somewhere under that mask is something or someone that we're very familiar with, and if that's the case, then it's not so much, a waste of a new, brand new character falling into the goon trap. It's, the sad, sad end of a life of someone who might have just been a once really, really powerful guy.
I don't know why you said that like that.
I don't know. I feel like it's appropriate, for all the times that Shao Kahn has just kind of gotten off the hook and not died and faked his own death or just retreated. What for a character like Shao Kahn would be like a fate worse than death, but being completely and utterly depowered with a bag over his head and being led around having no brain of his own by a small child or pygmy woman, as the case may be? I don't know.
Interesting.
I could see this being the end of Shao Kahn, and if so, couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yeah, but if that's the case, then there's always going to be that he gets transformed back into Shao Kahn later on in a later game. So that's just, that's just waiting in the wings if Torr ends up being Shao Kahn.
That's if there are later games. They said it's going to be tough to write a sequel after this. I'm really looking at MK10 and I'm presuming to myself, this is the end. I don't know. A part of me wants me to be wrong. A part of me hopes I'm right. But this really feels like the closing of a giant chapter to me.
I don't see them ending Mortal Kombat. I think with WB spending so much money to acquire the
oh no, not ending.
License.
I just mean I see another reboot.
That's all. God, we don't. I hate when people reboot after a reboot. Like the reboot already.
You have to.
The first was soft. This was hard.
There's sort of a limited viability in a story that's based entirely on, like, the MK9, you sort of can't understand that game without having already understood MK1, 2, and 3, and then going, here's all these things that are different about it now. So it's like a reboot that's an actual reboot that just literally starts from the beginning would be sort of easier to market into the future and, like, make adaptations of and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how the story plays out and see where they go from there. I hate resetting so soon after resetting or any of that. I just want a congruent story that's consistent and has long-term planning instead of let's just make this game as big as possible and paint ourselves into a corner, and then when it comes time to make the next game, then we'll figure out how the hell to get ourselves out of it. Like, I just hate that form of planning when you have a franchise that you're going to make sequels to or follow-up games to. There's no reason not to plan ahead into the future, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I guess that's asking too much.
It might be.
We really see further games down the line where all the characters are there after that 25-plus year. Some of them anyway.
I don't know. That's why I don't understand that this was the direction taken, but I know one thing is I don't like the idea of starting all over. I mean, even if it's a start fresh where it's completely different, not timeline, but none of that trying to recreate what we already created, just completely starting fresh, getting everybody being like, okay, we're restarting everybody and everything, and now we're going to completely do new things. I can get behind that, and I'm going to follow it no matter what, but at the same time, I just hate the idea of trying to get attached to the new thing only for it to be swept out from under you after the second game in that timeline. It's just like, what the hell are we doing here? Then it gets to, like, take for instance Friday the 13th. I don't know if any of you are fans, but they rebooted the series. I liked the reboot, but a lot of people didn't. So a lot of fans are like, reboot it again. And it's like, you just rebooted it. Why not just make sequels to that reboot and just keep going. Do it better if people didn't like it before. Instead, now people just want to reboot and reboot and reboot till it's exactly the way they want it, and I don't know.
Well,
that's me.
There is a third option. Like, a lot of people, for instance, with the Devil May Cry franchise, people who didn't like the new one were all like, just pretend it didn't happen and make a DMC5. So,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's one way to go about it that I think might actually work. I mean, nobody wants to see a bunch of reboots in a row. That was sort of the problem with the Spider-Man movies, is I think Amazing was made too soon after Spider-Man 3. Or like, they do it a lot with Superman and Batman. How many times can you watch Krypton blow up or see the Waynes get shot? Like, everybody knows already.
yeah. Well, I guess we'll just have to see.
Actually, you know what? Briefly, do you know what I could honestly see their next move being after MK10?
What's that?
Like Tekken Tag Tournament. They just, or I think it was Tekken Tag Tournament. They just had one game in the Tekken series, or actually no, King of Fighters '98. That's a much better example, at least for the next game around. Because King of Fighters, it always had its characters defined by its plot and new characters and whatnot, and I could really see them coming out with MK11 or whatnot, and it just taking that one break from story to just concentrate on a fighting game that had every single character that they could throw in from 9 and 10 in it. That wouldn't be a bad next move to take if they wanted to take a break from story. Not that I endorse that, being a story buff myself, but it's something to think about while they plan ahead for what the future of the franchise would be in terms of plot.
See, personally, I wouldn't want that because, I'm not a big fan of just like, let's throw as many characters as we can and make the trilogy/Armageddon approach. I mean, I see the appeal in that, and it's always fun to play against all the characters against each other now, but I want story, especially now that we're waiting, 4 years between Mortal Kombat games? So I want story after that 4 years. Ed Boon's not going to be living forever, so I'd rather he not waste his time on just a game for a game.
4 years, I think 4 years is about average. I think that we were really kind of spoiled by Midway really and churning out a game every single year.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I don't want an MK game every year. I like doing MK, then Injustice, then MK, and I think that's a great cycle if they continue that. I'm saying, with that being the case, I don't want to wait essentially 8 years between getting advancement in story, because if we're going to have a 4 years till the next game, and then that has no story, then another 4 years till we get the next game, that's 8 years of a gap between we finally get the next, advancement in Mortal Kombat.
I'm sure they'll toss out an adventure game somewhere along the line in there.
One hopes.
Talk about it for a while.
Ugh, I don't know. If anything, in 4 years, if they're not ready to take MK story anywhere, I doubt it would be a trilogy approach. I think it'd be MK versus Injustice, but that's just my opinion.
I would actually, and this is not a popular thing to say, but I would take the Capcom route. Instead of having 4 years between MK games, take a year off, maybe take another year off. Ultimate MKX, I would be all over that. I think and again, this is not popular, but I think we needed Ultimate MK9 so badly, because the input glitch caused so many problems. Player one advantage caused so many problems, and God, just the balance issues. It would have been so easy to balance Cabal. Cabal was fucking ridiculous, but all they needed to do was put cooldown on his instant air gas blast, and take away armor on EX, dash. Done. He's now an A-tier character, probably at best. And I know why they didn't do it, and I don't blame them. And I don't think it would have been positively received. I wanted more characters, I want a more balanced game, but it's a cheap alternative to making, instead of having a game every 4 years and putting sort of like I don't know what to call Injustice categorically, but having sort of like a fighting game alternative, I feel like everyone wins. And if it's $39.99, the developers win because they don't have to kill all this development time and all this money. The gamers win because they have something to chew on, 2 more years till the next game comes out. But that's me. I don't know. I realize there's a real bad taste in people's mouth when it comes to the Street Fighter 4 expansions. And I don't know why. They're $14 character packs. I think I think a lot of that is just an emotional knee jerk, but I don't know.
See, I guess that really just depends on what you're looking for in the game. If you're going from like a competitive and gameplay element, then that would be a great idea. But in terms of like story, people that want more story, if you're a fan of MK's story and that's what drives you to the game, then you're going to be hoping for more than just more characters, basically.
And that would be hard to do. I'm sorry, go on.
Well, as someone who cares, more about the story than anything really, I would actually be totally for like an Ultimate MK9 or Ultimate MKX, because the thing about it is, if you're also like adding new characters each time, then it is possibly our only chance to see more like returning characters. Like they could have put more characters like Kenshi and Rain. Like you could have had Tanya and Shinnok and other characters be in MK9, and then the ones you don't want to use in MKX, like that would be the fans' chance to see them, and then they'll be less bummed out if they never return again.
It's a risky bid, man. I feel like we're at the point where Street Fighter 4 is basically being kept alive by the Street Fighter 4 fan base. And it's a big one, and that's why they can still keep going. But Ultimate MBC3? Ooh, that bombed hard. But you wouldn't see me complaining at the notion of MK10 10 days later or 20 days later, much like MK3, UMK3 and Trilogy were. I'd like it to be a success for them as well as something enjoyable for us.
Oh yeah, like I said, I wouldn't turn down more characters. I'd buy the DLC. I'm not one of those people that's stingy about it. I don't care. I'd buy it and it'd be fun. And I agree with Razor that adding more characters and getting a chance for more characters that maybe wouldn't have made the initial roster or the initial DLC that got put out. It'd be cool to see those other characters, and you might get their story endings, which could technically give you your story fix. I guess I'm just saying, if your plan is to not release a new game in 4 years, but instead just keep going the DLC route and DLC, and do that for an extended period of time, like Street Fighter 4 has done for essentially 8 years, it feels like. I wouldn't want that. Eventually I want just a new game, completely. I just want something completely new. I don't want just characters, but characters for a couple years to tide people over, I'm completely all for.
Well, here's another thought. I'm trying to remember, one of the Street Fighter 4 expansions had like an anime movie with it or something.
It was super happy.
Yeah, super. And then they did sort of a similar thing with the DLC in SF vs. Tekken, where characters who were in the DLC, like Christy, got like a long story sort of mode.
Actually,
I don't remember if those were in the game or if that was like a CGI movie.
Actually, I think that Street Fighter 4, like vanilla Street Fighter 4, came with a little Blu-ray animated movie when it was first released, and then Super also got one that was basically about Juri, and that was, if I remember right, just released exclusively in Japan. So it got 2.
All right.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is you can include more story either as supplemental material or some kind of, you could make a little animated short, or you could put something in there when you release an ultimate or whatever that would satisfy those people too.
Yeah. So how about that Ferra Torr gameplay?
Yeah, we
gotten off track.
Went on for a while there.
So what do you guys think of Ferra Torr's gameplay? Go ahead and start us off, Razor.
Okay. He looks a lot like people are saying Doomsday and Bane in Injustice. I mean, the thing I find interesting is, from a certain perspective, he's the only character we've ever seen in an MK game who doesn't have some sort of projectile where he's throwing a fireball out there. I mean, that's not entirely true because he has a move where in one of his variations where he throws Ferra.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see for once an MK character who fights without projectiles, in his other two modes.
Yeah, and seemingly no magic from what we've seen, if I'm not mistaken.
he doesn't have any glowing special effects. There's nothing, it seems, supernatural about him other than his, like, huge body.
Yeah. He's definitely a grappler in MK, a brawler like that, and in my opinion, while that's not the most, visually exciting character, and it's definitely an acquired taste, or not even really acquired taste. It's just only a certain niche audience likes that to play as that type of character, at least as their main. I'm not one of those people. I usually don't tend to play the MK, or not in MK because it hasn't been in MK, but even in like Injustice, I never played the grappler. I never really played as Bane or Grundy, even though I like that style. It just wasn't my thing. So I guess it's cool to have it in MK though, and I dig Ferra Torr's gameplay, but I'm just happy to see variety introduced, and having somebody that's just purely a grappler like that. I'm liking that they're, once again, another thing that they're bringing over from Injustice, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, like I said last time about Kano that I like characters with like who can chain grabs together. And I mean those characters like Grundy, the inputs are pretty complicated. So he's really difficult to play, but I mean I find them visually interesting, like a character who doesn't have the big flashy explosive magic special effects. You can still make their moves look interesting if they're like something creative, like what I tend to think of is like professional wrestling moves like suplexes and pile drivers.
Yeah.
And Jax had a lot of those in MK9. Grundy has a pile driver somewhere in his chains and stuff like that.
Yeah, and Kano's had some of those in the past as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I think even dating back to like Deadly Alliance, he's had kind of some wrestling moves.
He had like that judo was one of his styles, and it was mostly like grabs and tosses.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's kind of almost a little bit of a misnomer to just label Torr as a grappler. He's just got so many options in terms of speed and tossing Ferra around like a projectile. I don't know. I can't approach the character the same way that I would, say, Zangief or E Honda or any of those guys. Just seems far too varied to just label him as a grappler. I mean, we already know he's got a surprising amount of speed. I don't know. That's about all we have to say in terms of him being a grappler. I'm not opposed to the idea of a grappler in Mortal Kombat. I think that something more traditional is a long time in coming. But someone like Zangief, Ferra and Torr still don't quite fit that bill for me. I'm definitely going to be using their vicious variation more than anything else because I don't find that the character works well without Ferra present at all, and I'm not much for high risk, high reward kind of characters, and that's their other gameplay variation. For me, it's going to be the vicious gameplay style for me, absolutely, for sure.
All right. Any other thoughts on Ferra Torr's gameplay?
I'm going to agree. I'm probably going to do vicious as well. I said last time that I like characters I like characters who don't have to zone. It's not that I have anything against zoning. I just don't want to be forced into that role. I like characters with options. I want to have offense, but I don't want to have to do mix-ups. I don't want to guess. So the more options I have, the more control I'm going to have, the more comfortable I'm going to be, the more I'm going to want to play footsies. And with Ferra, Torr, and Vicious, I have that option. If someone's going to, try to anti-zone me, I'm going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to, throw a little girl at you. And if they try to basically rush me down, well, I have options to deal with that. I have up-close options where the risk-reward is just as much in my favor as it is theirs. And it's funny you mentioned Bane from Injustice, because if you look at, I believe, Ruthless, that's basically Bane. That's basically Venom. It's a different consequence. It's a different cost, but that's essentially what Bane was, You just don't have that cooldown anymore. I believe it's a life penalty. I could be wrong about that, but when you get that damage boost, it's the same logic. You're doing everything you would with Bane, but just with a different set of specials. But it's the exact same mentality. So typically, yeah, I'm going to go for the variation that's going to let me do whatever I want at any range. Not whatever I want, but I'm never going to feel confined. I'm never going to feel like I'm trapped in a play style, which, as I'll always say, is why I like Smoke so much.
Yeah. All right, well, what are you guys' thoughts on Ferra Torr's, infamous split down the middle fatality?
It's infamous? Really?
Oh, yeah, everybody loves a good split down the middle fatality, don't you?
I do, but I mean, I've seen it before pretty frequently, and to be quite honest, more effectively. Hell, I think that the split was more effective going way back to Kung Lao and MK2.
You know what I think?
Hmm?
I think you love it.
You think wrong.
Top 3 fatalities all time.
Nope, lies. Out of all the fatalities I've seen from the new guys so far, Ferra Torr's is sadly the one that I'm least enthused about, Here's a character that throws a little girl around, as we've so aptly put it. I mean, I can actually just picture something just a lot more fun and involved. Like, he grabs her and just uses her as a blade to stab the guy over and over with. This one just, I don't know, he holds them, she flips over their head and slashes down the middle, and he pulls them apart. It's visually very nice, obviously very visceral, but I've seen better.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree, even though I know you love it, but I'm just gonna have to agree with you on the lie you just said, because I know that's not how you really feel. But what I think their fatality should have been, they could have easily just had Torr literally walk up, hold them, or just wrap his arms around them so they can't move, and then Ferra just goes to town and just completely stabs them to death, or slices them up. Just stuff like that. They could have, or just have him put his foot down on their back while they're on the ground, and Ferra just walks up and just starts literally just blading across the opponent's face. Like, something simple like that would have been perfect. But yeah, I don't see the point in having a split down the middle fatality like that. Even I do think it looks cool, but it's very vicious in the sense that you're literally taking blades and running them down, but like you said, it's nothing we haven't seen before, and it just lacks imagination and creativity altogether. It's got cool presentation, but that doesn't really mean much when, it's the same concept we've already seen. So it just seems like they ran out of ideas with Ferra Torr, which is a shame. So.
Yeah, I don't love it like Shadaloo does.
You don't know what's in my heart. I'm gonna cry now.
Yeah, I like that it's kind of quick, and it does sort of fit the characters. It's not like somebody attacks the torso and then goes for the head all of a sudden with a sword. But yeah, it's kind of forgettable, is all it is, really.
Yeah. Or it's not forgettable in the same vein that you're like, oh, it's another one of those fatalities. So then you just cast it off as, what was their fatality? Oh, yeah, it's just another split down the middle fatality.
Yeah.
So it's just a shame, for sure. How about you, Temp? Do you love this fatality?
I mean...
Because we're split 50-50 if you do.
Other than yes? I don't... of course I don't like it. I don't think anyone likes it, but if you were to ask me what would be a good alternate fatality, I really don't even want to see this character do fatalities. That's not... to me, this character's fun and strangely whimsical. I don't really... The idea of Ferra Torr and fatalities doesn't even really go together, in my opinion. Brutality is not why I like this character. It's almost like the irony is what attracts me to the character in the first place. So I feel like this would be a great example where a Quan Chi neck stretch would actually be really appropriate. Something along those lines. So
heresy.
Character's ridiculous, the fatality should be ridiculous. If the minute that irony is suspended, no, you need that Jim Henson effect. Otherwise, I'm not game anymore.
It'd be a fantastic fatality I just thought of. Like, Ferra just goes up and stabs the person in the eyes and then rides them around like Torr. It's like jumps on their shoulders afterwards, and they just start running around aimlessly, and she's just trying to control them. That'd be funny.
And Torr looks sad and abandoned.
Yeah.
And he's like...
Or we get Torr to break into a rousing chorus, break his silence, and start singing Dance Magic Dance, while flipping Ferra up into the air like a baby, and you get a bunch of Tarkatans with the background chorus. Just like
exactly.
Or we get Torr to ride on their shoulders.
What's up?
I said, or we get Torr to ride on their shoulders.
Done.
I hope friendships are back because I would really love to see what these two would do.
Yeah, that would be... I hope friendships are back just because I like the idea of something silly like that, because it almost gives them more of an incentive to be more creative since they're not doing just pure gore. I really thought the Babalities in MK9 were very creative, so... Anyways.
Yeah, same here. I would really like friendships. I would be all over that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love friendships. I don't see any reason they should have ever gone away.
Plus, it's just so silly and so fun to just... When you're facing your friend and you beat them, and you did it without, blocking or using punch or whatever the hell it's going to be, and then you just do something silly that just, makes them look dumb. Well, make yourself look dumb, but them by proxy because you beat them, so you just got beat by somebody that just, made gave you a present or holding a Sub-Zero doll or whatever. That's just good fun.
I think it's unfortunate because I feel like Animalities ruined it for everyone. Because I feel like after Animalities were so badly received, everything went down the shitter. We never saw a friendship again, never saw a Babality again, and tragic. Just tragic.
Let's hope that Babalities were a stepping, into that direction of, hey, we can have these fun things again. So
definitely.
But you have those people out there that think all that's, ridiculous and shouldn't be in MK because MK needs to be completely blood and guts and super serious all the time.
That really is what MK4 was missing, wasn't it? That light element of whimsical humor.
I think MK4 kind of made up for it in the fact that, the animations were so goofy.
Yeah, there was a lot of goofy things.
Because even the serious fatalities still looked kind of stupid. And I mean, I love the Reiko torso kick, but it's just silly to have the arms and head spin in the air like that. And everybody was sort of sped up or looked like they were moving way too fast, and that sort of added this Monty Python skit element to everything in the game.
And they all spoke in that Raiden gibberish.
Oh yeah.
You got my leg! Oh man. I remember I had an MK4 strategy guide which tried to decipher all of those as sentences, and the results were amazing. Like, I bought you your back, I bought you a bargain. Those were my favorite ones. Can't unhear it now.
I'll just always remember Jarek saying this is brutality in the worst acting ever. And that I feel like every friendship in Babality was just kind of compressed into that one line. I still look at that fondly. I do.
This is not Jarek. A brutality. This is a fatality. Dun, 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 dun. They might have gotten away with it if not for the little fatality cue that they had to throw in there. Just barely.
It played the music.
All right, well, that wraps it up for Ferra Torr. There's no better way to segue away from that.
I can think of one. We could all make that noise from the end credits.
Yeah.
What the fresh hell was that? Has anyone identified what that was? Someone humming. What was the intention?
I think it was supposed to sound like a laugh. I don't know. I think Ed actually said, he actually acknowledged that they did that in an interview. He's like, yeah, we were just goofing around the studio, and we thought it was, more funny inside jokes because people like Toasty Guy.
Well, that pretty much describes 90% of the things that make it an MK is just them sitting around being like, that would be pretty funny, wouldn't it? And then they just put it in. I mean, there's so many things in MK that you just know. Some guy was like, hey, it'd be pretty funny if we did this. They all had a little, chuckle, and then they're like, yeah, let's do it. They know it's dumb. They all
get serious, grim-faced, and it's in.
Yeah, exactly.
I just realized what that humming reminded me of. It's almost got the exact same delivery as the old Sugar Crisp cereal commercial. Can't get enough of that Sugar Crisp. It's close. It's close. Someone on the dev team was thinking cereal.
That's probably what it is. All right, well, moving away from Ferra Torr, we can just recap that only one of us really loved Ferra Torr's fatality.
Shut up, by your face.
I don't know why you're so ashamed of it, but that's all right. We'll move on to Kotal Kahn. What do you guys think of Kotal Kahn? Because I think Kotal Kahn is pretty awesome. I think it's really cool to have an Aztec character finally introduced into the games. in this sense anyways, and it's just really, he's just got such a cool look. Like, he doesn't look super interesting, like he's not filled with a bunch of colors or, you know, shiny things or a bunch of cool apparel, but he just, something about him just looks really interesting. His moves are really interesting, and the story that we're led to believe that he becomes, you know, a ruler at some point and then is dethroned. I'm just really intrigued by this character, and I'm just very curious to see if this is going to be one of the big bad guys, or if this is just another, you know, character along the way, or what we're in store for. What are you guys thinking? Shadaloo, start us off.
I am visually very impressed by Kotal Kahn. I love the design. I agree. It's long since past time that we've had someone with an Aztec influence. He looks amazing. What lets me down about him, though, is, I suppose, going into what I expected him to be versus what he's actually turning out to appear to be. Because if I'm not mistaken, his design actually appeared in one of the MK9 bits of concept art or one of the endings, and he or someone who looked very much like him was one of the Elder Gods. So when I first saw this and people began making those comparisons, I was like, wow, we've actually got a real life Elder God, who's not Shinnok, actually competing with mortals. And I was really enthused about that, because one of my problems has just always been this apathetic, out there, not touchable, not tangible role that the Elder Gods have always just played in MK. And I thought, I'd like to actually really just see one of them come down and take matters into his own hands, for better or for worse. For a while there, I thought, maybe this guy's come to set Raiden straight for screwing up so badly. And so it turns out that he's next in line for the throne of Outworld. I'm okay with that, I guess. But, I don't know. I was hoping for a little bit more. We'll see. We know the stories about his rise and fall, so it's not like I have to sit there and watch, 3 hours of cutscenes about Kotal Kahn's slow rise to power where he stays. But, I don't know. I look forward to what he has in store. I'm trying to remain optimistic. I wish he were an Elder God, if I might sound a little bit spoiled.
So wait, let me get this straight. You think he could use a little bit more and you're kind of disappointed? But Ferra Torr's fatality you think is perfect and doesn't need changed in any way?
How did this become a thing? Why this fixation on a fatality I plainly despise?
Just, we're all stunned by the hypocrisy.
Yeah, I just don't get it, man.
Oh, God.
You just have to go against the grain, don't you? You rebel, you.
Without a cause or a hope. Everything about him just sort of seems to scream Elder God. Hell, his fighting stances, his variations, they're all blank God. And seems like he's not a god at all. Or that we know of, anyway. We'll see.
Yeah, it's sort of a fuzzy point, because I kind of agree with you. Like, the thing that the Elder God that had a similar design to him, that was from the Raiden's bio vignette that they put up on YouTube during the publicity phase before MK9 came out. And yeah, I was sort of excited at the possibility of a playable Elder God too, but I still find him intriguing what his actual story apparently is, and I'll say, design-wise, he's my favorite of the new characters so far. And also, like, I think we were saying in the last episode that some of the variations where parts of the characters glowed looked too garish or didn't seem to fit. I actually think the way his tattoos or whatever those lines on his body are glow in all his variations actually fits him really well.
Agreed. I think in his case, I really like it. And I think part of that is he's not already an established character. So I think him being brought into this with the different glowing things fits him really well for his different theme, like God and his different powers and themes, etc. So yes, I totally agree with you on that aspect.
Yeah. And as far as whether or not he is a god, I mean, we don't know for sure, but it's got to be worth noting that his styles are named Blood God, War God, and Sun God. And
so it's probably safe to assume that he's not a god.
Well, here's an interesting story thing, kind of obscure because it comes from hidden Easter egg text in Deception. Shao Kahn, before he became the Emperor of Outworld, when he was the advisor for Onaga, was actually the equivalent to Raiden in Outworld. He was their protector god. So that you go from protector god to emperor is apparently some kind of pattern with these guys, maybe, because we know that Kotal isn't related to Shao Kahn. He calls himself Kahn like Kahn is a title, like it's the word for king. In some of his moves, if you listen close to his dialogue in the middle of fights, he refers to himself as the Khan, like he says, pray for the Khan's mercy.
Huh.
So, I mean, he could be a god. We don't really know.
I feel like it's very possible, nay, probable, that he's probably one of those really, really old, long-lived MK characters who's maybe been through a long period of exile on Earthrealm, and at some point in the distant past, he came to be known by the Aztecs, and it's probably worshipped by them as a god, but he wouldn't be an elder god in the traditional sense that MK fans know it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is interesting if you look at his design. I mean, because it's so Aztec looking, it doesn't really look like it comes from Outworld, because, I mean, you could make an argument that Outworld is like such a mishmash of cultures because it's a bunch of realms merged together, and maybe he comes from one of the merged realms and he just now lives in Outworld, who knows, but most of the, like, characters and designs we've seen from Outworld over the history of the series tend to be sort of Asian. You know, there's sort of a feudal Japan with like a horror skew to it look to them.
Yeah.
And so he's very different from that. So it is sort of like a wonder his background, where he comes from before he becomes the Emperor of Outworld, and like why he wants to be the Emperor of Outworld, and whether he's an Outworld god or if he's like came from another realm, who knows.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see, like I said, to see exactly who he is, what his role is, and how much of a story presence he'll have, because it's definitely an intriguing character. Any thoughts on his story and all that aspects before we get to gameplay, Temp?
I guess I'm in the waiting room when it comes to this character. When I first saw him in the trailer, he was actually my favorite character of the new characters, because he was very safe and inoffensive as opposed to Ferra Torr, which just immediately kind of confused me. And then Devora, who kind of grossed me the fuck out. And now it's kind of the reverse. I've come around on those characters. Kotal Kahn, I need more information. He does look cool, but if you ask me to point out a distinctive feature where I'm like, okay, well, what about this character is blowing your mind? I can't really point at anything. Not even really the gameplay. Right now, this character is just kind of a vague bad guy to me. Even as the Emperor of Outworld, I don't think that's anything special. That could have been a lot of different characters. I mean, it's cool that he is, and he may really own that role, but right now I need more information. The design by itself is my starting point. And it's not a bad design. There's just not one element about it that's really thrilling me at the moment. But I want to like him. I don't want to dislike any character. He's kind of in the middle when it comes to the new characters. He's in a nice little neutral zone, I guess.
He's in the friend zone. All right, well, let's move on to his gameplay. What do you think of his gameplay, Razor?
I don't know. He looks sort of very slow but powerful. It's not typically to my playstyle. I'm also sort of... We said when we were talking about Quan Chi, the style he has where he lays the areas on the ground that he has to stand in to buff himself. Kotal apparently has a style similar to that, where he summons these totems, and if he's near them or the opponent's near them, they have different effects.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like the same problem could exist where it's, you have to be very in control of both your mobility and the opponent's to make that effective. His other two styles, War God gives him that big paddle-shaped sword. I think that looks actually pretty interesting.
Paddle.
We're all thinking about it. Not bowing down to the Khan. That's a paddling.
That's a paddling.
Yeah, I think that looks cool. I particularly like the way that he'll hit them in the shoulder with it and then yank it back, and it sort of yanks them forward because it's got those teeth that sink into them.
Yeah.
And his other style, Sun God, with the, I guess it summons like a giant beam, and if he stands in it, he recovers health.
Yeah.
And then he's also got like a I think he's got a command grab in that one or something like that. I don't know, that looks interesting too. I'm just like, again, my concern with playing as Kotal is that he seems very slow but strong, and I prefer a little more speed unless I'm going for like a straight grappler.
Yeah, agreed. Like I said earlier, I prefer a faster character over a slow and strong character, so I don't know if I'll be playing as him very much, but I'll definitely give him a try. I like the way his gameplay looks, and I like the whole theme and how it's tied into a lot, each of his variations very well. You got, like you said, your Sun God, your War God, and Blood God, and I like the theme behind all three and the way they present it, but I don't know if I'll like playing as him as much as I enjoy just like seeing him be played, if that makes any sense. But yes,
I agree completely.
Yeah. I'm also in the same boat, unfortunately. Now, just looking over his 3 play styles, I don't see one here that particularly appeals to me. I'm a hit and run player. I like to get in, do damage, and get out. And being forced on a surface level to pick between a light focus on grappling, single strong heavy hits, or strategies involving Blood Totem, this does not feel like a character that I'm going to be coming to time and again, sadly.
How about you, Temp? Did you pretty much say your piece?
He's definitely not going to be fun to watch, because I think he could be viable. I need to check out the startup time on the totems, but like, if he can really get a lot of mileage out of the knockdown game, then that could be cool from a gameplay viability standpoint. Like, if you get a knockdown, even if it does work out, it's not going to be interesting to see him knock someone down, set up totems, then crouch block. No one really wants to watch that. And if it works, though, on a tournament level, I think he'll be really cool. But even if it does work, I don't think it's a great design if your character has to give up their knockdown game, because we've seen that before. Hakan from Street Fighter 4, he relies on oiling up, and you essentially have to give up your mix-up on the knockdown just to get that oil. And he's a good character once he has it. But I don't know. This is a character I'm really going to study the gameplay on. It's hard to draw any conclusions. And, I mean, the whole paddle thing, it's cool, I guess, but I'm not really... I don't know if I'm feeling it just yet.
Not feeling the paddling? That's a paddling.
Pray for the Khan's mercy. Taps palm with paddle.
Alright, so how about his fatality that we've seen? I think it's pretty neat. I think it's one of those, even though it kind of makes you feel for Kano's probably looks at it every time it's done, and he's like, oh. But I like the way it's presented. I like the way it's achieved. I like the fact that he takes out a knife or whatever you want to call that, an arrowhead or whatever the hell it is, and he slices his opponent's chest horizontally across basically their pecs and reaches in, grabs out the heart, squeezes it, and the blood goes into his mouth. So clearly he feasts on the blood a bit and plays up his blood god aspect. What are your guys' opinions on this? This is I think it's simple and to the point, and I think it's done.
I don't know why, but my mind didn't go to Kano when I saw the fatality. It actually reminded me of something out of Primal Rage. And that's a compliment. I think the simplicity about it is nice, but you learn a lot about that character by watching that fatality. And I think if you watch the finishers from Primal Rage, that was often the theme. Simple, brutal. I mean, for some of them obviously were really bad, but I think of something like, if y'all remember Sauron's fatality from Primal Rage. I think he just stomps on you and you splatter, and that's that, you know. And sure, let's get more of that. I can't. I feel like I'm being redundant by talking about simplicity and practicality for every fatality, but I really can't preach that gospel enough.
Yeah, I really like the way it ends with him squeezing it and drinking the blood. Like it sort of reminds me of Scarlet's finishers in MK9. Like it says something about the character. Like he's got this god aspect to him, and he's basically giving himself a blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
And when a finisher speaks to the character, that's obviously what you want. That's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I just love how when he takes the arrowhead or knife or rock or sharpie object, whatever the hell it is, it escapes me, but the way he takes it and it doesn't look like he struggles much. He doesn't look like he's being ultra vicious. He just, lightly just goes across his opponent's chest and, enough to get it out, like to open up the skin like that. And then just after that, he just full on takes their heart out, crushes it in his hand, and then the blood just comes pouring into his mouth like that. That's just, I don't know. The aesthetics of it and the way it's presented, I just really like how that's done. I think it's neat. It's neato.
It's cut and dried. It's simple. It speaks to the character. And so when he does the cutting, there's not much of an expression on his face. This is him completing a ritual. This is pretty much exactly what I want to see in a fatality. It doesn't make it into a 5-minute torture porn marathon. It's wonderful. It fits him.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite out of all of them, to be quite honest. Probably my favorite.
Probably, but probably not.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody believes that.
I don't think there's any beating Ferra Torr, but hey. We should probably, we'll save that judgment until we see the entire roster's fatality, but I'm pretty sure yours is set in stone. So, all right, any other thoughts on Kotal Kahn's fatality?
No, not really.
Okay, then. All right.
We're good.
Good.
We're good, all right. Well, that'll do it now. Okay, well, that pretty much does wrap up the new characters. Well, that kind of leads into another discussion that we can have real quick. What's your ideal number of new characters versus returning characters that you feel a new MK game should strive for? And we'll each kind of give our just basically say what it is and then give a short reason why. Go ahead, Razor. What's the ratio of new characters versus returning characters that you feel is the best?
Well, some of it depends on the quality of the characters themselves, I guess, but just as like a hard and fast number, I'd say generally I like to see about a third of the roster be new.
All right.
And yeah, and I think part of that might just be because that's sort of what I'm used to. That is about the ratio they usually go for.
Yeah. How about you, Temp?
There's what I want, and then there's what's good for the franchise. What I want, I don't know, 3. I'm not a big fan of adding too many new characters because I've been seeing this trend over the years where everyone's like, more new characters, then we get the new characters, and the next game, no one gives a shit anymore. It's like, okay, that was yesterday's news. Anyway, and I'm like, if you're going to put a new character in the game, I feel like they should have long-term relevance. And I feel like, and I don't mean to put down a specific group here, but I feel like a lot of people who want all these new characters, I have a feeling a lot of them are not going to care about Ferra Torr or D'Vorah 2 games from now. And I don't really know if I like that philosophy, if it's even a conscious philosophy. But as for how many there should be, I'll say 5. I think 5's a good number. I think that pleases everyone. You get your new blood. You get to kind of see who worked and who didn't, who was popular, who wasn't. And it's not a gamble. I feel like you carry the essence of the previous game, and yet you still get to add something new. Street Fighter 4, I believe, had about 4 new characters, I think if I'm counting. Abel, Viper, Fuerte. And I feel like I'm leaving someone out.
There's the big chubby American guy.
Rufus, yes, thank you. And Rufus is actually pretty popular. If nothing else, he has a huge tournament legacy with Justin Wong. So I feel like that's the best of both worlds. And I don't really feel like there's this outcry for new characters in Street Fighter, which there should be. I mean, God, the returning cast, by the time you get to Ultra Street Fighter 4, is fucking ridiculous. And you don't really hear this cry for new blood unless kind of the conversation for Street Fighter 5 comes up. But I don't think there's any consensus on what Street Fighter 5 should be. I see these people who are talking about, yes, new characters, yay. And then the very next post, they'll be like, oh, everyone from Deception sucked. All the new characters from Deadly Alliance sucked. And I'm like, well, what makes you think it's going to be any different this time? Why do you think the characters are going to be amazing? It's like, well, because I've already seen Ferra Torr, and I already know he's better than every new character that was in Deadly Alliance and Deception combined. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? We know nothing about this character. And I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, I can't tell you what you like and don't like. I can never argue taste. And I'm not going to call out the sincerity, because I believe these people. I think they really do like Ferra Torr. I think they really do like Devora. I like these characters. I'm not going to rob them of that, but I don't know. In terms of just a sequel and how many characters we're going to bring back, I think 12 new characters is a horrible idea. And I think, I doubt we're going to see 12 new characters based on recent interviews. It sounds more like 8. That sounds like a better estimate. Yeah. But that's my thought.
All right, Shadaloo. Go ahead. Go ahead, Razor.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say quick that I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the answer I gave was basically what I would do, like, in a vacuum, or for specifically MKX. And that's sort of in a situation where you're acknowledging that they're sort of trying to throw away a lot of the older characters and
exactly,
replace them with, there's empty spots on the list. But realistically, you're absolutely right that, like, when you bring in new characters, those are less slots that you can give to the guys who were new characters in the previous game, who still, they need to keep appearing or else they'll go nowhere. And just, that's why people think characters from Deadly Alliance and Deception sucked, is because they didn't have any really follow through. So, I mean, in a world where you have to acknowledge there are approaching 70 characters in the Mortal Kombat universe, maybe we're getting towards a time where we really need to reduce the amount we introduce each game.
Yeah. And I think the problem is people don't even think of the previous games. I feel like people see this gap between MK3 and Armageddon, so they never reach that mindset. They never think of, well, we need to kind of carry over the legacy and develop what we have, because a lot of people aren't even conscious of it. They came back for MK9, so never mind developing what we already have. Most people don't even have that, in front of their minds at the moment.
All right, Shadaloo?
I think a little under third is a nice balance. A good trick would be to maybe bring back some characters from the past who maybe didn't hit off entirely well the first time through, but gained a little bit of a reputation. One character that I really, really do want to see make a nice big comeback is Reiko. He's not universally hated like, some of the MKDA characters are, but, you need to pick those guys who have got their fans. Give them another chance to, be familiarized and give them a little bit of breathing space. Make just under a third of them. Under a third should be new. Rest returning faces, but, vary it up a little bit. Don't just pick the same ones that you expect to see. That's the way I stand on it.
Gotcha. See, I'm in pretty much agreement with Temp in the fact, I'd say probably more like a fifth. Like one out of 5, or even just basically for every 5 characters that are returning, then I'd bring in a new character. So on a 25 character roster, you'd have 5 of those characters, or no, that's not right. Out of a 30 person roster, you'd have 5 new characters. So on more towards like 25. Okay, so say if we are going to get 24 characters, I only really want to see maybe 4 new characters. But that's because very much like what Temp was alluding to and outright saying, that so many people like to say, I want new characters, but are the same people that condemn the characters that were new in the last game and the last game and the last game. Basically, they're a broken record in the sense that they're always hoping for new characters, but they don't learn their lesson. I was never one of those people because I didn't like the new characters starting with MK4. I didn't like a majority of them, so I didn't want new characters. Well, it's not that I don't want any new characters, I just didn't want as many new characters. I still maintain that my favorite characters, for the most part, are from MK1 through 3, and it's not that I don't like any MK4 through MK Deception characters. I don't even include Armageddon, because I don't know, I didn't really gravitate much towards Taven or Dagon as much as I did the other people in the series, but basically, other than maybe 2 from each of those games beyond Armageddon, I didn't like the rest of them, so I don't want more than maybe, 4 introduced, because, like you said, we have a huge roster of people to choose from. So many people that, maybe didn't do so well the first time they came on, or just, they did do okay, but they just kind of got passed over the next game, because that does happen. People sit out no matter how popular, except for, the golden 2 or 3 that make it in almost every single game. I just don't think it's a good idea to keep adding big amounts of characters. I agree with you that 12 is a huge mistake. If we're going to go with that with MKX, I'll accept it, but I'm not going to be happy about it, because I think we should be maybe getting like 5 or 6 tops. In my estimation, more like 4 or 5, but we'll probably get like 8, like you said. But I don't want to see a bunch of new characters introduced and then half of them go away for long extended periods of time. We could just get 4 new characters and then save the other 4 that you were going to do for the characters that, didn't get or weren't as popular or could be redone, like you said. So I'm in complete agreement with that. I've never been a big fan of new characters after MK3, just because I haven't been wowed by many of them, and there's very few that I want actually brought back. So with that said, yeah, I was very skeptical going into this game, but so far I'm really liking the new characters, and I think a big part of that is I think these new characters, for me anyways, pretty much trump most of the characters from MK4 through MK Deception. I say most, there's probably 6 characters that I like from that series, or those area of games that I still like more than these 4 characters thus far, but these new 4 just seem so unique and so different and have such personality. They're oozing personality, both in their visuals and their gameplay, that I didn't feel, or I just didn't get the sense of from the previous characters. So, yeah, I think with their new and improved, refreshed imagination and creativity when it comes to creating these new characters, I have more faith in them now, so I'm more accepting of more new characters. But I don't think we should add so many that we drop most of them going forward. I think you should only add what you are planning and hoping to carry on into the future, at least 3 out of 4. If one character gets left behind, that's just the reality of the situation. But, if 3 out of the 4 get left behind, then that's a big problem.
I think it actually speaks volumes to how much faith and confidence that that the staff currently appear to have in the new cast. If the rumors about it being almost or near to half the cast being new people is true, in a series that's had historically such amount of difficulty with bringing and keeping new cast members and keeping audiences interested in them, and even after all that, nearly half the new people, half the cast here will be new. They must have a lot of confidence in these guys to be able to pull that off.
Yeah,
it's a big risk to take.
A thing about that is that was only, I don't think that was ever confirmed, and if it was, that's not something that carried on past whatever convention that was said at, because they've gone back, be it Ed or whoever else has kind of brought it back a little bit, brought it down a little bit, because, and I hope that is the case, because I don't want to see more than 10 new characters in this, because there's so many people that do want to see the characters get new chances that were in previous games, and also returning characters from MK9 that are still alive, that still deserve, a spot in this game. So
10 characters though, that does sound about right. That does sound like about just under half.
Well,
if we're estimating 26.
I I don't recall if they ever said it would be around half. What I remember is at E3, Ed's quote was that it would be the most new characters since the first game.
Yeah.
And if you count, there were 10 characters in the first game. I mean, including Shangoro and Reptile.
Yeah.
So it could be 10 or it could be 9. And then, like later on, he said that it would be as much around the same as many new characters as Deception introduced, which is I think somewhere around 8.
It was like around 8 or 9, yeah. And yeah, if it's like 8 new characters, I can deal with that. I mean, I'm going to deal with whatever the hell they give us anyways, because I'm not going to throw a big fit because they went over my new character preference by 1 or 2 or whatever. I don't care that much, but I just don't think it's the right way to go. Like, especially if they don't know what the hell they're going to do following this game. Do we really want to introduce new characters only to reboot the series again, and then just those 10 new characters are never seen again for several games or whatever? I just think that's a bad plan. I just wish there was more planning overall with both characters and, story direction.
No, that's true. And even if you stay in the circle of people who do like the Deception, Deadly Alliance, MK4 characters, even within that circle, personal taste is still a factor because that camp doesn't always agree on which characters were salvageable and which ones were not. I defend Cobra. I think Cobra is totally workable. That's not a very large fan base, but I still think there's something good there. But you're right, though, because I don't want to be unjust to the people who did play those games and did try those characters out and were like, I don't get it. That is a viable voice. I'm not going to rob those guys at all. But on the flip side, though, and I think Razor posted about this, correct me if I'm wrong, Razor, but if a lot of the people who played MK9 never played MK4 or Deadly Alliance, Reiko might not literally be a new character, but he's a new character in every sense that matters. He's new to the people, to the so many millions who only bought MK9 and then played the previous first 3 games, and I feel like to some extent they are part of that classification, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, that's the thing. If you're talking about bringing like Reiko or Raiko, I call him Raiko, so I'm going to continue to call him Raiko. But if Raiko is brought back, and he's only been in MK4 and Armageddon, and I'm not going to count Armageddon because that was pretty much an all-in trilogy type of game. So he's only really been in MK4. If you bring him back now, however many years later, 15 years later, or whatever it's been, he's going to feel like a new character, regardless if he was in MK4. And it's the first time he's ever been in a 2D game, and it's the first time he's ever been in an MK game of this quality. Because face it, regardless of your thoughts on MK9's story, the quality of the game, be it competitive-wise or just in terms of how much they packed into there and content-wise and the detail they put into each character, it was better than it's ever been. And to bring a character from MK4 through MK Deception into this new level of quality since the WB takeover, they're gonna turn that character into something really amazing, especially with the new characters they're introducing now. If they put that kind of love and attention to detail and personality into a character that was only in one game before, I have full confidence that they could, make, quote unquote, turn chicken shit into chicken salad. Not saying a character has to be chicken shit, but that's the whole idea and mindset, is you can turn somebody that wasn't so great before into something great now. Yeah, they're going to have to change some things about the character and just give them more to work with, but that's perfectly okay. I think in a 2D environment, Raiko could do extremely well. I think he definitely is one of those characters. I mean, I don't want to see every character brought back from that era, and I told you I only like 5 or 6 of them, but someone like Havoc or you guys, I personally like Ashra and Frost and stuff like that, and I think one of them would be really cool. I don't know if Frost is necessary, but I think Ashra, I thought she had a great design, a decent story. I loved her appearance, that she was a lot more conservative, and I'd be interested to see where they take her specials and whatnot in a 2D environment.
I think that's a very, very fine line between the likes of a Reiko and the likes of a Jarek. You know, we say characters from MK4 through Deception, and it's a really mixed bag. You've got some characters out there like Kenshi, or I mean, Kenshi's one thing. He seems to be kind of universally popular, and Havoc seems to have a ton of fans too. I mean, I personally consider Havoc kind of a lock for this game, but a character like Reiko, I think, is a perfect candidate. You know, new to the new masses, the new generation of fans, familiar to the old. You know, has oodles of places to go story-wise. It could be more than just a goon. Wonderful. But you got characters like Jarek that absolutely no one really wants to see come back. I don't think I've seen anyone say anything nice about Jarek in a very, very long time.
He wants to see him.
Razor loves Jarek?
As much as you like Ferra Torr.
Let me put it this way. I don't love Jarek, but I'm probably also his biggest
supporter,
cheerleader.
Yeah.
Because here's my philosophy is, even characters I don't like, I don't believe in throwing things away. I believe everything can be improved. You know, I hate Dairu and Darius, but I see potential in them. I do want to see eventually, you know, not all in the same game, but I do eventually want to see all of these characters brought back and something made more of them. You know, look at what they did with Stryker in MK9. That guy used to be one of the most hated characters in the franchise, and now he's a badass.
Look,
How many chances do you give a guy, though?
Well, no, you see, look, we have to be careful because what Razor has is called a legitimate issue. It's called Hoarder. No, I'm just kidding. He doesn't want to throw anything away. No, I understand.
You just tossed off the cliff.
No, I understand where you're coming from, and I totally see your point that you're in your opinion, and I completely relate to this and understand it, and to some degree agree with you, in the sense that why create new characters when you have a roster of over 50 and you're only using 30 of them consistently? Why not, instead of creating new characters that people love, why don't you just dust off the 20 that you threw away or aren't paying attention to, make people love them, and then you have 50 people that people love? Like, I totally get that. I don't share the same desire to bring back Darius or Dairu. They're two of my least favorites, personally. I don't see the potential in them that I see in, like, bringing Bo or Fujin or Havoc, etc. back, but I totally get where you're coming from. And do I think they can make them cool? I think they can make them cooler and better than they did before, but I don't know. It's just, I feel like if they're still held down by keeping them like they were before, they can only do so much, but I definitely think they can make them better. It's just, do you want to spend the character slot on that particular person, or would I would choose other people before I choose them, and I think you would agree with that, but...
Yeah, I mean, well...
Yeah.
I'm sort of arguing in favor of when I talk about revamping that many characters is that I'd sort of like to see... You know, like when Capcom did the Resident Evil remake?
Yeah.
I'd like to see something like that done for every game from 1 to Armageddon. Where, like, you're taking the characters and you could put story modes in the remastered versions of those games if you wanted to, put that much work in. And then they'd have the personalities, and if you kept using a 2D engine, because that's obviously superior to what they had in the Deadly Alliance era, you could make something of these characters, and they wouldn't necessarily have to be in the new game, but if you're remaking the game they were originally in, they obviously should be there, and that would be your opportunity to improve them. Or even, it doesn't even have to be a video game. Like, you could make an animated series or something. A lot of games have had books or anime miniseries, something like that. You could do that for certain points in the franchise, and at some of those points it would be appropriate to have a Suhao or a Dairu in the plot, and that could be your chance to polish that guy and make him interesting to people. And if he does catch on because he was in that media, then maybe people would want to see him come back in the game.
Yeah. Like I totally see that like being a potential option, but and I don't know. I just for me the idea of replaying like I like Deadly Alliance, I like Deception, I liked Armageddon at the time that I played them. I really enjoyed them. But looking back, I have no desire to play Deception or Armageddon all over again, and I would not care to see them remastered. I'd rather they put their time and effort into something else. And that's kind of how I feel about some of the characters. Is I'd rather they just put the time and effort into other people. But I understand the reasoning for why you want that, and it's perfectly reasonable. It's just I guess I'm of the mindset that onward and bring the people that you can save. I mean, they could technically save everybody, but I just rather bring the more ones with higher potential still there than the ones that they have to like make an extreme effort to basically bring to, you know, a status that people can really get behind. I don't know.
What I'm suggesting is very ambitious. I like to dream big, and it's not realistic.
For me, I suppose it's just kind of a matter of how many shots do you give a guy, you know? I like to try to see the potential in most characters, even if they're, you know, universally hated. No one really likes Dairou all that much. I feel like MK needs and deserves and really should have a bounty hunter character. I think that Dairou would have been great for that. I just think that the execution was not there. I'd be up for seeing the likes of Dairou come back maybe one day. But at the end of the day, I think you can only give a certain amount of shots to a certain concept. And I don't know. After you give a failure of a character one more shot, and if that doesn't click, at that point I feel like it's time to close the chapter, close the book. That's why I wouldn't particularly care to see Jarek come back. That's the way it is for me, you know?
Well, I don't know that I'd agree Jarek had a second shot, because I don't feel like Armageddon really was one, I guess.
That's just a common theme. It feels like no one counts Armageddon as anything.
Oh, I don't.
I count it as the game that had Serena in it, and I like it for that.
I don't know. My thoughts on Jarek are, I don't know why they do this, because people want Jarek to be his own character. They don't want him to be counted as a clone, even though that's essentially what he was designed for. So that's where it gets to be a little bit confusing on this part, because to me, I don't look at Jarek as anything more than a clone of Kano, just like a stand-in, a fill-in. Whereas to somebody else who is actually a Jarek fan would, of course, look at him as his own unique character. So I don't see any purpose in bringing Jarek back and making him anything more other than the fact of they just want to make every character worth something, and that's I don't know. That's a lot of characters you have to spend the time to revamp, and I don't know, I guess with seeing their new characters that they are starting anew with and the quality of them, I almost just kind of want to keep going down that route. So I don't know.
Jarek specifically is... It's tough to make an argument in his favor, because you're right, there is nothing to him besides that he's just Kano 2. So it's sort of like, the only reason I'd want to see him, honestly, is just as like a background NPC to fill out the ranks of the Black Dragon and show that there's, you know, members of this gang, that it's not just Kano, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
He wouldn't have to be playable or anything.
Alright, well, that pretty much wraps it up for new character talk and the idea of new character versus returning characters, etc. We got one more segment that we like to do. Last time we did Johnny Cage for our character retrospective. This time we're going to be doing Baraka in the spirit of Halloween. And we'll be talking about Baraka.
Let's see. Baraka is difficult to say nice things about, I find, because he's spent so much time as an underdeveloped minion. I mean, that's even sort of going back to his origins. Like, it could have been a lot worse than it is, because when Baraka was created, their intention was sort of briefly in the concept art phase to have everybody from Outworld look the same as him, like be the same race of needle-toothed demon.
Yeah.
And like there was a design for Shao Kahn that went unused where he basically looks like a really tall Baraka with long hair dressed like a pope. And thank God they didn't go that way. But I don't know. I feel like the main problem with Baraka is that every time we see other members of his race, with the exception of his MK9 ending, they all look exactly like him. Like, none of them has hair or blades in different places or is even female.
Yeah.
And, like, even the NPCs that you see in MK9 story mode, the generic Tarkatans, are dressed in basically Baraka's MK2 outfit with different colored shirts. So they don't even vary in clothing. And it's just sort of... that devalues him as an individual, because it's like, what makes him special compared to the rest of his race?
Because he's banging Melina, that's why.
Yeah, see, that would be something. But they've never pulled the trigger on that storyline. Like, apparently they were gonna in MK9, and it ended on the cutting room floor for time, or because they didn't have the resources to animate it, or I don't know why, But yeah, the shame of Baraka is there's these tiny little threads of things that could have been a plot, that would have made him different or interesting, that they just keep dropping. Like the Melina thing is one. The fact that he looked like he'd been cut in half and stapled back together in MK4 was another. So yeah, I don't know. He just disappoints me.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I really like Baraka. Just I like his gameplay. I liked him in MK2. His story leaves a little bit more to be desired, like you said. It felt like he started off strong, but then they just basically, as you said, as time went on, they didn't really separate him enough from his race. They didn't make him stand out enough, and he just seems like he just happens to be the Tarkatan or Tarkatan that we're following. So that's what makes him special. He's not I don't know, he doesn't have anything that separates him enough, but for me, I like him. I don't know, it's tough because there is that part where you want more from him and you wish that he got, some spotlight and treated better and has that big story arc that you really get behind him. And I don't know, it's just I like the way he looks. I like the way they've presented him in the games. I like the way his gameplay is. I like how he's evolved gameplay wise. But yeah, I totally agree on the fact that he's been pretty much kept in the shadows and constantly kind of repeating the same thing, that he's the number one goon or the bad guy or villain or whatever you want to call him, the henchman. So yeah, it's kind of a shame in that aspect.
You guys, I believe, have pretty much said the piece that I wanted to say about Baraka. If I could summarize him in a phrase, he's smarter than the average bear, but at the end of the day, he's still a bear. And it's a shame because he's got this really iconic look to him. I find him, visually, he's one of the best looking MK characters, and I wish that there was so much more to him than there actually is. But he's been written into a corner almost from day one. He's the epitome of the Outworld goon. And whenever he comes along, I find myself going, well, he'll be fun to play, but I think nothing of his story because I know there will be nothing there to think about. When he's gone for a game, I don't miss him. When he's gone for 2 games, okay, I could wonder where he is. Where's he been? What's he been up to? Probably not much. I'd like to see him back. And then he comes back, and I don't care again. I like him. I want to love him. But I just like him. That's about all there is for me to say about Baraka. It'd be nice if he had more potential. At the end of the day, I just don't know if he even does. I think it's time for a new Tarkatan.
I think it's kind of fascinating. I feel like the Baraka fan base is the most forgiving of all fan bases. I said about Kano, what holds Kano back is a lot of people like him, but he's no one's favorite character. That is not true of Baraka. Baraka fans really, really like Baraka. I think there was a member of the MKO staff, I don't remember his name, but that was his character. He loved Baraka. Baraka was MK.
Was it Baraka MK?
No, actually, no, it wasn't actually.
Are you sure that I think there was a mod a long time, like over 10 years ago at MKO, that's name was Baraka MK.
I don't even think he's gone. I think he's still in the IRC chat as we speak. But
I know because he banned me at like when I was like 11 years old and I was an asshole and stupid.
It's plausible though.
I mean, not much has changed, of course, but
but yeah, that's Baraka fans in a nutshell, I guess. I don't know. People really like Baraka, no matter what. Really, it's a very unconditional love, and the way I see it is, you're right. They dropped the ball on so many things, even with the Kung Lao Baraka rivalry, which I thought was a really good foil. None of that made it into MK9 either. And what's really cool about, or not cool about that, is they had all the material there. They had the invasion of the Tarkatan. They had Kung Lao on screen enough. And if you think about it, what did we take from story mode about Baraka? He basically has really strong feelings about weapon safety. That was the final thesis.
He's the only one who knows don't point a shotgun at your face.
When Baraka is giving you safety lessons.
He broke that plateau, and I'm really proud of him for that. But that's all he has, you know. But you know, Baraka fans are okay with that. You know, they know what they like. They like a mutant with blades coming out of his arm, and the concept gets so much mileage, I think, because of that. You know, it's a very hard concept to do wrong. With all the incarnations of Baraka, they've never gotten that part. That part's always shined beautifully. Deception, even though I like the staples from MK4 and I'm sad that never really kind of went anywhere with continuity, Baraka did look good in Deception. I thought that was a very well rendered. I know people have a problem with the eyes, and I guess I do too. But it's amazing to see that loyalty. And from a story perspective, is it warranted? I would actually say yes, because the essence of Baraka never went away. It's just what they did with it. You know, it's not like some other characters where they completely kind of changed the essence of the character. Trying to think of an example off the top of my head. I guess to some extent, maybe Nightwolf, how he was kind of historian. He was, I don't know, he basically shielded everyone from Shao Kahn's, soul-stealing. God, I don't have terminology for this shit. There's no real way to put this into words, but when Shao Kahn stole all the souls, Nightwolf was the guy who bailed out, you know, Raiden's chosen warriors. That's pretty much gone. That's not there anymore. And from what I understand, Nightwolf isn't really just, you know, a historian anymore. Isn't he like this immortal dude who was actually there during the historical events of the Native Americans?
Like his bio talks about him like he's, you know, a couple hundred years old, and he was around when like the Indians were wiped out historically, and like because he talks to Scorpion about like how Scorpion's not the only one who's seen his people be murdered, and the difference between him and Nightwolf is that Nightwolf found peace, and you know, Scorpion's still, you know, living off rage and revenge. But yeah, like back in the original MK3, he was like this, just a scholar, like this guy who was part of the real world, and you know, studied shamanism and then put it to use during the invasion because that was the time that he had to do it. And like the whole idea behind him when he was created, like according to John Tobias, was they wanted somebody who was more modern and not just an Indian stereotype. And now that's kind of all Nightwolf is.
The actual phrasing was they called him a historian and preserver of his people's culture. He was a guy with a day job.
I love that. I missed that, to be honest with you. And some people might like the current MK9 rendition better in terms of story, but it's a big difference. You fundamentally changed the character. We will probably never see anything like that with Baraka. He will always be an aggressive mutant. He will always have blades. And again, the fan base of Baraka, they know what they like. So it's hard to fault NRS outside of the details. I would like more development, but I mean, at the same time, there's other characters I'd rather see developed, so I would take it as a fair opportunity cost, but I do feel a little bad for the fan base because they are so loyal. You know, they stick to that character pretty much no matter what.
I think it's because, you know, it's probably a simple love for Baraka in the sense that they like Baraka because he looks cool. He has those giant blades. He's vicious. It's just, I don't know. It's not a love for a character's story or development. It's a simple, this character looks cool. He looks badass, and I'm gonna chop you up. Like, I don't know.
It's an incredibly strong design. It's just a shame that there isn't more substance beyond it.
Oh yeah, he's a character that gets by on his looks and his gameplay and the uniqueness and the iconic status of said looks and gameplay, but there could be more, and he could reach whole new levels of just, in general, the quality of the character, and can bring in so many more fans to the character if he had the story there.
I will say this, he's always a treat to watch gameplay-wise. Baraka is one of my favorite people to see in action. No matter what he does, it looks fun, it looks slick, and it usually looks pretty painful. I think that one of his best deception moments was just like extracting the blade really close range into someone's face. I love that move. That was wonderful.
All right.
It's interesting because, well, I'm sorry, go on.
No.
Oh, were you closing shop on Baraka, or?
No. You.
Okay.
And you know what, thinking about it, I don't think he's really got much in the way of bad fatalities. I can't really look back on a Baraka fatality and think that was crap. I actually liked the ones he had in Deception. I thought they were a pretty good fit for him. My favorite one of all time is
really amusing and yet brutal. Like, he's always doing stuff like with the stab the guy in the stomach, lift him up, spin him, and then just stick the other blade up and let him helicopter his own limbs off.
That was a bit crazy, but it was fun.
Yeah.
Actually, talking about character being delivered through fatalities, I remember that's one of the ones back when I was a kid that really struck me. You had all these characters doing finishing moves, but Baraka in MK2, that was the start of making someone die slowly and painfully. Because he just jammed those blades into your ribcage, lift you up, and you'd squirm and you'd slowly slide down. And I remember thinking, that is one sick puppy.
Oh yeah, the animation
with camera angles though, like that would be an amazing fatality where just zoom in and Baraka's just holding eye contact in the most creepy way ever. I think that would be really powerful.
God, yes, that would work wonderfully. Oh, they should revisit it.
Well, Baraka, he was really popular online with Deception. I don't know if you guys played Deception online. It was horrible, but Baraka's everywhere, all over the place.
Well, that leads us perfectly into our next part of this conversation, is what was your favorite Baraka? Razor, what was your favorite Baraka?
I would have to say MK4 Gold, just because I was really intrigued with the staples and the idea that it was like Kung Lao had done that to him with his hat. You know, it was sort of never really said out loud, but just it was there sort of in an unspoken, like, subtle, hinted way. Just like it was there in my imagination, I guess. Maybe it was all like, maybe it's all headcanon, but it's just that's sort of the most interesting I've ever found Baraka story-wise. Because at that point there was some kind of mystery to him, like how did he get that way, and you know, is there this rivalry between them? Because otherwise both him and Kung Lao don't have a whole lot going on. So I don't know, I just that captured my imagination in a way he doesn't usually do.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite Baraka is probably, I'd have to go Deception, just because I felt like that was a strong comeback for Baraka. MK9 Baraka in design and gameplay was really fun. Even MK vs. DC Baraka was really fun to play as and had a cool design. MK2 is obviously classic. I did enjoy MK4, but I think just the Deception Baraka, I felt like he got a lot of attention, and not so much in the, you know, main storyline as much as, you know, I would have liked, but just even the leading up, the promotional material and just the teasers leading into the game, I really liked how they, Baraka's come. I mean, he was the first image, if I'm correct, that was released for Deception. Was that him with his arms back, and everybody thought he had that small left arm because it was at such a weird angle of him just drooling everywhere. I really liked that image in the beetle lair, I believe. But yeah, I just thought Baraka in that game had a really cool appearance and gameplay.
I'm gonna go and say without hesitation that my favorite Baraka is Ferra Torr's Fatality. No, far and away, without question. No, without question, 2. Baraka had something back in 2 that I think, much to his misfortune, he's really lost over the ages, and that's a real element of the alien, the unfamiliar. A lot of the things that Baraka did gameplay-wise, from like the way that he moved back and forth with his arms kind of up and at his sides and fingers kind of clenched, to his jump kick, the way it was done with 2 feet rather than one extended forward and the other a little bit way back. His jumping punch, where he was basically just taking a swipe at you with both hands in midair. Yeah, if memory serves, actually, I think he was the only character who actually had a quick 2-step high kick combo when no one else would have stuff like that till MK3. Everything about Baraka in that game just screamed alien, other, different. Actually, there's something else I just remembered, that they made his teeth for the costume by putting a couple of Lee press-on nails on a Nosferatu mask. Originally, his teeth seemed a lot more silver than bone-like. And I've always found that design-wise and character-wise, he lost something after MK2 that I really, really do want him to get back at some point. I feel like the Tarkatan race could have been a lot creepier if they'd gone more down that avenue, down that vein. I'm not going to say that they're just a bunch of angry assholes with blades coming out of their arms, but MK2 Baraka had something that I think that the race could use a little bit of revitalization through using. That's where I stand.
All right.
Well, I mean, overall, with Baraka specifically, I guess in all the rambling I did with the character, I kind of forgot to mention that I don't really like Baraka that much. I think he's cool, but he serves a very specific function. I'm probably going to say Deception as well. I think the costume was a really good redesign of the character. I remember the alt costume doing the MK2 costume really good justice. I think. I mean, my memory's kind of vague on that, but
it was a pretty good likeness. It was.
I remember being very strong, so I'll probably go Deception overall.
All right, Shadaloo, what was your favorite Baraka fatality?
I think I've already covered that at length. Slowly sliding down the blades a la MK2.
How about you, Temp?
Shadaloo said it best. I couldn't agree more.
Razor?
As silly as it is, I think I'm going to have to go with the one I mentioned where he spins you like a helicopter and cuts off your limbs. But Shadaloo's is a good second.
Yeah, it was between those two for me as well. And ultimately I went with the MK2 lifting you up and slowly sliding down just for the pure intimidation factor. If just imagining what it would feel like, I mean, beyond the fact that you are dying, so of course, that's quite intimidating as it is, but the fact that he lifts you up and literally just stares at you and you just slowly sink down and your dying, last little bit of, consciousness and life, you're just staring at this vicious face as you slowly slide down these blades. That factor alone just makes me feel like that would be a far creepy environment than him lifting you up and slicing all your limbs off as you spin around, which would not be good either. But I don't know. I just think it's the pure intimidation and simplicity and presentation of it that just comes off so satisfying in that fatality.
I'm flashing back to the old Jeff Roven novel, the old Jeff Roven MK novel again. I'm remembering something now. Going back to what I was saying earlier about that element of the alien and how strange he looks. Just, looking at him for the first time, looking at Baraka, what did you feel? You didn't think of him as a guy. You thought of him as this weird alien thing. And just thinking about the Roven novel, I remember I think it was Sonia's examination of Baraka the first time she ever saw him. The phrase was something along the lines of, She took a look at the creature standing before her in a ceremonial dress robe and couldn't help but wonder why not. That's how creepy and strange that Baraka originally was. This thing with a mouthful of metalish teeth that doesn't seem in any way, shape, or form human. That's the Baraka that I miss.
And with that, we leave you at the end of this episode. Please flip over to side B. No, yeah, if I just hope Baraka gets a better shake going on into the future if he's brought back into MKX or a future game. Yeah, that'll pretty much cover it for this episode. For real though, if you guys liked the episode, be sure to let us know, and if you didn't like it, be sure to let us know. Give us some good feedback going forward. If the episode's too long, let us know. If it's too short, let us know. We'll do 5 hours if you want 5 hours.
Like, comment, and subscribe. Do.
Yeah. Nope. You don't have to do any of those things if you don't want. No, we'd prefer
the
you.
The choice
not...
is yours.
Yeah, we prefer that you do, but no, it's up to you. But yeah, so that pretty much wraps us up for next week. I'm not sure what we'll be doing for sure yet. Part of me's thinking that we should probably do our top characters that we want in the next are into MKX before any more characters get revealed. Earlier than better, or earlier rather than later. So yeah, just give us some feedback and we'll let you know. And if you want to be a guest on the show, message one of us, the whole spiel if you listen to the first episode, and that'll do it. So for Razor, Temp, and Shadaloo, goodbye.
Ciao.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
You will never win.